Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV, cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, while we watch, the world watches as the U.S. and Iran wage war. I don't know if you guys heard, but unfortunately, Iran managed to down 2 of our planes today. They hit an F-15E and they also hit an AC-10 or A-10, I believe. Sad, very sad. They forced a couple helicopters to turn back, but they didn't down them. So who knows when this war will end or what will happen. But in the meantime, Ukraine and Russia still are in the midst of a conflict. And the question for tonight's panel, very simple. Should the U.S. fund Ukraine in their war? And we have some great guests to talk about it, and I'm curious to see where this goes. I'm going to give the mic first to Kalinda to introduce herself and give an opening statement, and I'll give it to Mr. Lactoid, and we will go from there. Kalinda, please.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kalinda. You can find me at Kalinda Live on YouTube. I am also on Kick at Kalinda as well, but I don't really stream a lot there yet. I'm kind of new to the streaming space, but I love history and geopolitics, and that's usually what I talk about. So I guess my opening statement is I think that, yes, the U.S. should continue to help Ukraine because they are an American ally. They are also a NATO ally, and I think allowing countries to invade their neighbors sets a really bad precedent, and I think it would come back to bite America because it would destabilize Europe, and I don't think that would be good. America trades with Europe quite a lot, and it's better for America to be able to launch any sort of military action if they have to from Europe, like what they're doing in Iran right now really wouldn't work out particularly well if they were if they couldn't rely on being able to go to German hospitals or other places like that in order to to get their wounded treated or to launch military stuff from their European platforms and whatnot. Yeah, that. And I also just don't. I think that it wouldn't be good because China might look back and think like, hey, well, you know what? Russia managed to get away with it, so maybe we can get away with it too. And I don't think that like appeasement has never been a good idea, and Russia is probably not going to actually they wouldn't stop at Ukraine. I don't think. Putin has made it pretty clear he thought that the dissolution of the Soviet Union was like the greatest like tragedy of the 20th century. Yes, actually, just that. None of the other really bad shit that happened in the 20th century. That is what he thought. So yeah, I think he wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union. He wants his empire back. So yeah, and appeasing him isn't going to work as much as Donald Trump might think otherwise. So yeah, I don't, and I also think that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was wholly unjustified, which I'm sure is what this debate is actually going to be about, rather than the other thing. But that's all I got to say.
Okay, well, thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing how this goes. Lactoid, please.
I am Lactoid. You find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. And I am in opposition to the U.S. funding Ukraine. We've already dumped just under $200 billion into this conflict, and it needs to stop. For the U.S. to fund any party to a conflict, I generally have two elements that I think are reasonable that need to be met. One, the party we are supporting has the moral high ground. And two, our support will be effective at ensuring the moral high ground is sufficiently achieved. I don't believe Ukraine has satisfied either of these elements. Us funding them does not appear to be efficacious due to the high amounts of spending, Ukraine's continued losses, and the fact we are pushing Russia into China's influence. And I don't believe that Ukraine has the moral high ground given the current power structure's authoritarian tendencies and rejection of the self-determination of peoples within their country, which has been a continued problem for Ukraine, but which escalated dramatically with the 2014 Euromaidan coup that I believe we're going to spend a decent amount of time here discussing. It's my understanding Kalinda had a lot of problems with the way that the facts that I was stating in regards to Euromaidan. So yeah, I kind of want to start with that before we get into broader geopolitical questions as to what's more beneficial for America or not. Because I think really, unless you're just like an ultranationalist, I think really these moral questions do matter to you, right?
What the moral questions about, like which moral questions? The ones about Ukraine and whether or not Russia had a right to invade? Yeah, they do.
Ukraine and what they did.
Honestly, I wouldn't want to have this argument with you if you weren't literally out here, like just like basically justifying Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That's my main disagreement. If your argument was just fuck the US or like fuck them, it's none of our business, I don't think we should be there, then I really wouldn't, then like, okay, whatever, you're just a fucking libertarian person who is an isolationist. But that's not what you do. Instead,
It seems to go
you
against your
argue-
intro.
Yeah.
Well, I
Because
guess
in your intro, you were talking
I
about.
guess hold on,
what-
if I may. So I guess the prompt that you guys set up, we're not doing that. I guess I'm not sure.
No, we're not, because Lactoid rejected the prompt. I wanted the prompt to be.
You accepted the prompt I proposed.
Yeah, I did accept the prompt, but we already know what this debate is going to be about, because
You're lying
every
already.
Ukraine debate, you make it about the revolution of dignity.
So, you agree to the prompt.
First, if we're not going to do the prompt,
Wick,
then fuck it.
Wick,
10
no,
pounds
no,
or 10
no,
euros
we
from
are-
Prussians.
We are going to do the prompt.
Prussian for
Okay,
Prussian
that's fine.
menace.
Listen, I just
Hold
want
on,
the
hold on,
conversation to go
let
to
me
the
make a little money.
conversation.
Super chats
first.
already, Wick?
Okay.
Oh my
$10
God.
or 10
You greedy
euros,
animal.
I should say, from Prussian Menace to say thank you, Wick, for all that you do. Lactoid is my favorite person to dislike. Okay, that's it. I just want to make sure if you guys send me money to ask some questions, I'll put it in there. So just FYI. But go ahead.
So in your intro, you went into discussing how you think that it's overall geostrategic for America to fund Ukraine.
Yeah, I do think that.
But then you just said that you wouldn't bother to have this discussion with me if I was just simply, hey, America needs to be more isolationist. In fact, you only want to have this conversation with me because I think there's critical moral problems with the way Ukraine has behaved itself, which doesn't seem to line up with your intro at all.
I had another part of my intro, but the problem is that I feel like the prompt that we have set up here is like kind of runs counter to what the conversation is actually going to turn into. Because every time you have a debate about Ukraine, this happened with Tim Pool, this happened on the last debate that was hosted on by Wick here between you and Lonerbox and Dylan. You make it about like Euromaidan and how Russia's actually justified in everything they're doing.
Yeah, you
And
specifically
I'd
said
rather
multiple
argue
times that
that
you want to
with you.
discuss Euromaidan.
Yeah, I did, but only because of the way that you frame it and the way you frame everything else about the war.
Okay, so you wanted to argue about Euromaidan.
Okay, are we arguing about Euromaidan? I guess. Look, here. Let me ask a question then to both of you. And,
No,
I want to ask. Hold on. I want to ask Lactoid a question.
Okay, go for it. I guess. Here.
Why did Euromaidan happen, Lactoid? Why did it happen?
Strong pro-West sentiments within the western part of the country, combined with stronger, kind of more leaning towards Eastern preferences in the east of the country. And there was a kind of similar to America, but not quite. There is a strong, like polarized kind of political split, especially in 2010, between the East and the West. And leading up to the unconstitutional coup of 2014.
Revolution.
Okay. Was it constitutional?
I don't give a
Why
fuck
are these
about
people?
that. It was a revolution.
You don't care about the rule of
Yanukovych
law?
violated the Constitution. He literally
How?
outlawed protesting. Oh, actually, no. You know what? Hold on. I'm not going
Which
to let you do
article?
this. No, finish answering my question. I'm not going to let you do this.
I just answered it. No, I just answered it.
Okay,
I answered it directly.
You're wrong.
Hold on.
What
I answered it.
What happened?
I know your idols tell you I'm not going to let you do this. I answered the question directly, and now I get a question. So what I answered, just to remind you in case you forgot, was that
but you're wrong,
Euromaidan,
though.
until you ask me a question, and then you can answer why you think I'm wrong in your response. You asked me a question as to why do I think the Euromaidan coup, you call it a revolution, happened. And I gave you a very specific reason why I think it happened. Now, let me ask you directly. The people who initiated Euromaidan, the people who launched that, and the people who participated in it, and the politicians who voted Yanukovych out without, literally unconstitutionally, quite literally in violation of the Constitution, were they insurrectionists? Did they violate the Constitution and deny democracy to the people who elected him?
I would not frame it that way, no. And I know that that's what you want to talk about.
What part of what I said is wrong, specifically?
Yanukovych.
And why?
Yanukovych outlawed protesting. Are you familiar with the dictatorship laws that he passed? The anti-protest laws?
I understand. Yes, I understand that in January.
By the way, the Ukrainian Constitution does guarantee freedom of assembly.
Yeah, let me answer. So there is a asterisk when it comes to freedom of assembly. When the anti-protest laws, or the anti-riot laws, depending on how you frame it, were passed in January 2014, you had already multiple months of insurrectionists that were occupying government buildings, throwing fireworks and petrol bombs at police, And by January of 2014, were
How did
arming
that-
themselves.
Hold on. Why did that start happening? Who escalated first?
It's unclear who threw the first punch, but
No,
there was
that
conflict
is not
between.
true. That
It's
is
absolutely
not
true.
true. No,
What's
it
the
is
exact
not.
date that the
November
first punch was
30th.
thrown?
November
answering
30th
you, let her
at
answer.
1
Okay.
o'clock in the morning, the Berkut went into Maidan and they violently kicked everybody out and they beat them up, and all of these people were unarmed. That is
Okay,
what
if I have
happened.
if I have an article
That's the escalation.
if I have an article from
Okay.
November 28th, 2 days before you just said, about how they broke into and occupied a government building, would that change your mind?
What? What?
You just said the first punch was thrown on November 30th. If I have an article from November 28th, 2 days beforehand,
Where did they
about
Where did
anti-government
they do that?
protesters breaking into and occupying a government building, would that change your mind? You seem
I
to be
believe
very
that there were
confident in
other-
saying November 30th.
Can you show me this article?
Sure.
DM it to me. I can bring it up on the screen.
I will.
No,
I
no,
will DM.
Put
I will
it
DM
put it
to
in the
you.
group chat.
Actually, sorry,
because
the
I want to
25th.
read
The
it.
25th. So 5 days beforehand. My bad.
Okay, do both. Send it both to the group chat or whatever, and send it to me, and then we can pull it up, and you can show what you want to show.
If this wasn't in Kyiv, by the way, then this really doesn't justify, like, was
Well,
this
we're
in
gonna
Kyiv or was
find
this
out.
somewhere else? Where was this?
I literally sent you the article. It's
All
in
right,
Kiev.
hold on.
Kyiv.
What? I'm not going to pronounce it the Russian way.
I said Kiev or Kyiv, depending on how you pronounce it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what I did.
So they're storming government buildings on the 25th. Why did you say that the first punch was thrown on the 30th?
That's when they went in and cleared out the square violently. The protesters.
That's not what I.
there
That's
were
not what I asked
peaceful.
you. That's not what I asked you. I asked you when the first punch was thrown. I said it's unknown when the first punch was thrown. You said no, we know it. It was the 30th. You shill. And now I sent you an
didn't
article
call you
on
a
the 25th.
shill.
Okay, I sent you an article from the 25th, 5 days before. Why were you saying the first punch was thrown on the 30th if they were storming government buildings on the 25th?
Hold on.
I'm holding. It's in the first part of the article.
Yeah, but I'm not just going to read the first part of the article because you like to cherry pick facts.
I mean, the first part quite
That's-
literally proves you wrong because you said the first punch was thrown by the government on the 30th, even if in this case it was done by the government.
Well,
it was
now,
the 25th.
hold on a second.
But it's because they were storming the government.
Do you think that occupying a government building is like the same thing as do you think, would you consider this to be the same as like going as like attacking cops or whatever, or like beating people up or like sending people to the hospital or doing
watch
violence
the video.
in that way?
Watch
Because
watch the video.
sit-ins are a thing that happen.
Yeah, it was not a
know.
sit-in. Was not a sit-in. You can watch the video. It's the cops and the rioters punching each other.
Yeah,
This
but
is from the 25th.
This is a 1-minute video, though. Is this the beginning of this? Like, I have no context.
You said the first punch was on the 30th. Here's a video of it happening on the 25th. You're wrong.
You're trying to say that.
Why are you so
okay,
confident with your wrongness?
Okay, fine. You know what? I'll walk that back.
Fine, you're wrong.
Here's the problem.
Okay, walk that back.
The problem.
I'm going to hear that a lot. This discussion, I think.
No, I don't think that you are. The problem is that you are trying to say that the protesters here were the ones who threw, like, that you seem to be trying to say the protesters threw the first punch, and we don't fucking know if that, or like, I said we know if that's the case.
What was my answer? What was my answer? I said we don't know who threw the first punch.
Yeah, because you like to like obfuscate. By the way, none of this justifies outlawing protests.
You directly lied about the date of when this happened, and you're accusing me of obfuscating.
Justifies outlawing protests.
I thought we were gonna
or the nights or the shit that happened on November 30th.
Okay. So
like
I sent you.
You don't.
I sent. What I specifically said.
Do you think
stop,
that
stop,
all these protesters were one amorphous
you are just lying.
blob?
You are lying about what I said, and then you accuse me of obfuscating while you yourself are lying about what the evidence shows. You started off by saying, because I said we don't know exactly when the first punch was thrown, which is a very humble answer. I don't know exactly who threw the first punch. You said, no, we know exactly who did. It was the government when they stormed a protest in November 30th of 2013. I show you an article of protesters fighting with and punching the cops, and the cops punching with and fighting with protesters on November 25th. and while maintaining, I don't know who threw the first punch. And where specifically am I obfuscating?
Because that you like to try to, like I said, you like to cherry pick
No,
things.
here.
Hold on a
So
second.
don't generalize. Where specifically am I obfuscating in this example?
Because that you want to say like because you're trying to equalize like the two sides or whatever. That's the other thing that you.
What am I obfuscating in this example?
Hold on a minute, because I didn't.
Look, don't come so hard if you can't
Maybe
handle the
this
smoke.
wasn't in the Wikipedia article.
Oh,
is that where you got that from?
I don't know. I don't know where I got it from. I don't know if it was in the Wikipedia article. If that's all you read, then I don't know what to tell you.
That wasn't the only thing that I read.
Clearly, you didn't see
this.
this.
The things that I read. No, there's a lot of shit that happened, dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although,
wait. You're right. There's a lot of shit that happened.
Wait a minute.
And knowing exactly the date of and exactly who was the first punch when we don't know.
Kalinda,
just a minute.
Kalinda, go ahead. I'm going to give you the mic, but then I have a question for both of you.
Here's my problem. This doesn't get back to what I actually wanted to like ask you, because I understand that you really want to talk about this instead of where I was going with the other thing. I asked you, how did Euromaidan start? And you gave me like this general answer about conflicts between the East and the West, but that's not the answer. Do you acknowledge that Russia economically pressured Yanukovych to back out of the association agreement against the Budapest Memorandum? Do you acknowledge that that's the thing that happened?
Yeah. So there was some economic pressure from both the EU.
There was a lot of economic pressure.
Okay, stop cutting me off.
Russia threatened to bankrupt
Stop cutting
Ukraine.
me off. No, there was when you look at the actual percentage. So there was some tariffs and some trade inspections that started increasing in 2013. When you actually look at the percentages of overall trade it affected, it's a relatively small percent, single digits. So it's not a ton of trade. This did happen. I'm not denying that it happened. This is also on the combined with the fact that there was a tripartite trade discussion that was proposed by Yanukovych with Russia and the EU, because the EU also has trade restrictions that were definitely going to kick in if Ukraine joined the European Union. And it was, very specifically, the EU minister, or I think the president, very specifically said, no, we're not even going to bother having these three-way trade restrictions, or these three-way trade discussions, which I would argue is a form of economic coercion. Now I'm going to go back to what, look, I answered it. I answered it directly. I'm going to go back to the thing you tried to run away from.
Hold on.
Where you very specifically.
Hold on. Right?
Are you getting involved
if
already?
If a clarifying question to your answer, I think it's fair to let her ask.
Yeah, I do have a clarifying question. The tripartite trade agreement thing. Are you talking about what Yanukovych proposed in like December, where he was saying that the U.S. or that they would be an observer to like the customs union, and then like they would sign the association agreement? Then what are you referring to?
I'm referring to the proposed trade discussions to arrange a three-way trade deal. The trade deal was going to be between Ukraine, Russia, and the EU, because there are trade restrictions that Russia has with other countries. There's tariffs, there's inspections, there's things that happen, and vice versa. The EU also has tremendous amounts of restrictions on what can come in, the taxes on what can come in, VAT taxes, all sorts of different things. The Donbass, which is dramatically overrepresented in its reliance on trade with Russia, and also happens to be where, specifically Donetsk, where Yanukovych comes from and makes up his voter base, would have absolutely been economically hurt if Ukraine just joined the European Union without any kind of trade deal. Not just because of restrictions.
It was an association agreement. They could have continued trading with Russia.
The goal was full accession into the European Union.
Yeah, eventually. That would have taken years. Ukraine had to change a whole bunch of shit. The EU wasn't just going to let them in.
The association agreement absolutely had trade restrictions.
Ukraine still isn't in the EU. And they signed the association agreement in like 2017. No, that's not the reason. They could absolutely join the EU. It's not because they're currently at war. They signed the association agreement in 2017. Why didn't they like immediately join? There was like multiple years between then and 2022.
Sure. 2022.
It takes a long time to join the EU.
Oh, God. Currently, right now, the maximal Russian war goals include Ukraine joining the European Union. The accession agreement that was being pushed for in 2013, that was delayed. I mean, this was the whole point of Euromaidan to begin with, let's not forget, would have led to trade restrictions on Russia. It would, in terms of specifically being part of the EU and what they allow to and from Russia, but it also would have put trade restrictions. It would have led to Russia having trade restrictions, of course, because they also control their border in terms of tariffs and inspections. And yeah, this would have disproportionately hurt the Donbass. Is this enough clarification, Wick? Can I go back to the other bullshit you were saying?
That's not like according to anything that I saw. Like,
well, we all know you don't read a lot of the sources, apparently.
Russia could have continued to trade with the EU or
look,
with
maybe this was outside of the Wikipedia that you read, but I'm telling you,
no,
this is
it
the
wasn't.
case.
It was
this
an
would have led to trade
agreement. It's not the EU.
This puts, first of all, it absolutely would lead to trade restrictions on the Donbass from both like the restrictions from the EU, but then also the restrictions from Russia. This absolutely would have happened. Regardless, whether it be a kind of exactly how long it takes, I agree. It's not exactly clear, because I'm willing to say things like that. It's not exactly clear how long it would take. Maybe it could take a year. Maybe they could try to push it through. Maybe if Euromaidan hadn't happened, maybe they would have come to some kind of deal within a year. Maybe it could take in 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. Who knows? We don't exactly know how long that would have taken. What we do know is that joining the European Union would have led to trade, and not only the accession agreement, but the full European Union membership would have led to trade restrictions from the EU on Russia, and then also, of course, from Russia to the EU. Russia, of course, has the right, just like any country does, to control trade across its borders. We can tariff people. We can inspect goods that come through to and from.
Economically coerce Yanukovych.
I know. We can talk about the Budapest memorandum in a second. I know you think you know a lot about this.
Well, no, that's not. Now, it's important because that's the whole reason why he pulled out of the association agreement.
Yeah, he pulled out of the or delayed it. Pulling out here, I want to be very clear, is he didn't say this is not going to happen. He's very specifically said, I want to delay this until... Okay, stop using these terms.
Russia was coercing
very
him.
Hyperbolic, dragging his feet.
No, he did, though. He did drag his feet. By the way, he was super
Hold on. There will be order in this court. You got to let Lactoid finish his statement, and then you can question and press him and all that, right? But Lactoid does have to have space to finish what he has to say.
Sure. So there absolutely would have been trade restrictions from on both ends, and you're right that this was probably the main factor, or at least at the very least a major factor. I'm guessing there was probably other factors at play, but this was I'm perfectly willing to concede this was a major factor in the reason why Yanukovych delayed the accession into the EU agreement, very specifically in order to work out a three-way trade deal with Russia. This was in November of 2013. He very specifically said, we're delaying this and so we can negotiate a three-way trade deal with Russia, so we're not going into this in a way that could dramatically hurt the people that vote for me disproportionately in the Donbass, the people who overwhelmingly have economic ties with Russia. And what was the EU's response to let's even have negotiations, let's even have three-way trade negotiations? No, we're not even going to bother. We're not even allowed to do that. We're not even allowed to have these three-way trade discussions. Now, I think that is a portion of that is also economic coercion, but I mean that's up for debate.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, did the EU sign an agreement that they wouldn't economically coerce Ukraine, even though like that? Also, hold on, wait a minute. First of all, it's not an EU like accession agreement or whatever. You keep saying that it's like accession. It's an association agreement. It's not the same thing. It's an accession agreement. Their very specific goal is for Ukraine to join the European Union. Yes. You're saying that because that you want to make it seem like Ukraine was like on the cusp of joining the European Union. They were on the path. Sign this thing. It would put them absolutely on the direct path. Years. I don't know how long it would take, and you don't know either. Why are you so confident in all these claims when you're just demonstrably wrong? Okay, exactly how many years? Wait. Exactly how many years? Exactly how many years? Stop. Exactly how many years would have taken Ukraine to join the EU? Go ahead and tell me why you know that. I don't know how many years, but I know that it takes way longer than you think. You thought, like, we don't know. It's going to take like 2 or 3 years. Ukraine, you do realize that there are certain requirements that you have to meet in order to join the EU. By the way, I understand. We don't know the speed that Ukraine could have.
Hold on, Lactoid. You got to let her finish. She let you finish.
Yulia Tymoshenko out of prison.
Yeah, go ahead.
Letting Yulia Tymoshenko out of prison was one of the EU's demands. The EU would have had a whole bunch of shit that Ukraine was going to need to do in terms of cleaning up their corruption. And this is the kind of shit that would have taken years. They required the same thing of Hungary when they joined the EU. They weren't just going to turn around and let them do it like in 2 or 3 years after they signed that agreement. It would have taken years. And yes, my understanding is that Ukraine was still going to be able to continue to trade with Russia. Also, Yanukovych was pretty gung-ho about about the association agreement up until like November. He was talking about it. He called all of his everybody from the Party of Regions to a meeting, and people went and they spoke about this afterwards to Reuters. Reuters did this really good, really interesting big piece about like Yanukovych and everything, where he was like yelling at these people about how we're going to sign the association agreement, you guys. And like there were people who were mad because yes, people in the Donbass did have very real economic concerns about like Ukraine potentially joining the EU, and they were worried about like austerity and measures and all that other shit that the IMF and whatnot might impose upon them. You know, like, yeah, I'm not going to say that that's not real. Obviously it was real. But like, I'm just saying, Yanukovych did this really weird about face all of a sudden. And it was clearly because that Russia was like continuously like fucking with him. He probably would have signed the agreement if Russia wasn't like economically coercing him. So you kind of have to acknowledge that the Euromaidan occurred because of Russia.
Can I respond, Wick?
Of course.
Okay. So regarding this path to the EU thing, you don't exactly know, and I don't exactly know, which I've said the entire time, how long it would take. We don't know what kind of things the EU would kind of waive, kind of other demands that they would make to join the EU. If they would choose to waive any of those, they do that for certain countries. When it comes to what sort of ones they'd stick by, how long it would take Ukraine to comply with any of the demands from the EU in terms of joining the EU. We don't know the timeline. But what we do know, and I think what you just admitted that there was concerns as to EU austerity politics in the Donbass, is that at some point, whether it be 2 years, because you don't know for sure that couldn't happen, maybe a year, you don't know for sure that couldn't happen, whether it takes 10
It was
years.
10 years
that at
for
some
Hungary.
point, whether it takes 10 years, I know you're citing Hungary, I get it, countries are different. It doesn't matter unless you have a trade deal worked out, which was the proposal. I mean, this was why Euromaidan was so important, right, to the protesters, which is unless you have some kind of proposal, this locks Ukraine into a certain path. Euromaidaners wanted Ukraine to be locked into a certain path, and the people against Euromaidan did not want Ukraine to be locked into a certain path. They wanted a three-way trade
actually
deal.
doesn't, but okay.
Hold on, I let you talk. It does. Yanukovych wanted the country to have a three-way trade deal with the EU and with Russia. This was rejected by the EU specifically. They didn't even want to show up to the talks. Regarding Yulia Tymoshenko, that vote to release Yulia Tymoshenko, who had been convicted on corruption charges in not only 2011, but she'd been accused of multiple corruption instances going all the way back to 2002, multiple times over. And by the way, Zelensky has since arrested her for corruption. So she's a bipartisan
I'm not saying she's a
victim.
saint, buddy.
Sure, but maybe that whole hey, she's doing corrupt shit. If Zelensky's currently arresting her and Yanukovych is currently arresting her, maybe she's doing fucking corruption, dude. Regardless, the Verkhovna Rada had 3 separate votes on whether or not to let Yulia Tymoshenko out of prison. All 3 of those votes from the legislature failed. This wasn't Yanukovych saying, I will never let Yulia Tymoshenko out, no matter what the Verkhovna Rada says. The Verkhovna Rada specifically did not vote to allow Yulia Tymoshenko out.
Can I ask a question?
The reason why this is important is
That's
because you
got
quite literally
nothing
have
to
the
do-
EU. You have the EU making demands to Ukraine about their internal corruption legislation and which convicts they have to release, when the democratically elected body, in this case, the Verkhovna Rada, had 3 separate votes on this and voted it down every single time. I agree with you. This was a barrier when it came to the EU, but it's not like you can look at the Yanukovych and say, well, this is really bad regarding what he did to Yulia Tymoshenko.
I'm not saying it's
much more
his
complicated
fault.
than that.
Okay.
Hold on, just a second. Can I just? I'm not saying I'm not saying that it is his fault. The reason why I brought that up is because it's an example of something that the EU imposed. Now, I don't care that much about Tymoshenko, which is why I didn't look into whether the charges are bogus. But the EU seemed to think that Yanukovych imprisoned her because she was his political opponent, and they thought the charges were bogus, and that's why they wanted her to be released. And that was something that they asked for. And also, I can paste this article here. What?
They wanted her released because she was ultra pro-West, and is.
Okay, you can say that if you want to, but that was the belief, that they thought that she was imprisoned for her politics. But anyway, As far as I don't know why you were going on about that. All I'm saying is that, yeah, it took Hungary 10 years to get into the EU. And I know these countries are different, but Hungary had a bunch of corruption issues too. And of course, now they have corruption issues again. But yeah, the EU has requirements in order to allow you to like join. And
Never denied that.
yeah, like it's not.
I feel like you ignored everything I just said regarding this.
What about Timoshenko or about
No,
people?
everything I said about
West?
the economic concerns that you seemingly admitted to prior on
Yeah, I
the
do.
east part of
Yeah,
Ukraine.
I agree that.
So if this happens and Yanukovych has his power base in the east, why would he not delay the agreement until they can get some kind of three-way trade deal with Russia?
I just find it very hard to believe that he all
Okay.
of a sudden decided that he wanted to delay the agreement, and that this just happened to correspond with Russia putting increasing amounts of economic coercion onto him, and him being worried about Ukraine being bankrupted as a result of this, when Russian officials were literally out there saying we will bankrupt Ukraine, and Putin talking about how like it would be an attack against Russia if Ukraine signed the association agreement, and like just all the fucky shit that Russia was doing. Yanukovych campaigned on moving closer to Europe, but he also campaigned on maintaining good relations with Russia. He tried to ride that line.
He did.
But yeah, I do admit that there was stuff in the East, and that those people there had very real concerns. I think that you lie or that you distort like some of those concerns. But yes, lots of people there did have concerns, and most of them didn't want to join the EU. And most people in the West did want to join the EU.
Okay.
But it was like kind of a 50-50 thing. It wasn't like, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It was
also,
close.
by the way, I don't think that because I know that because I watched all your other debates. I don't think that disagreements over a trade thing is something that suddenly it means that you're being denied self-determination, unless you think Michigan should have left the union.
I don't think that. Why do you think I think that?
Because that's your primary go-to for.
When have I ever said? Hold on. When have I ever said that? What's happening right now?
Okay, that's fine. You know what? I'm glad that you don't think that, because that would be incredibly
I don't. The denial of self-representation is when you coup their president they voted for. I thought you guys cared about that on January 6th, but I guess you don't.
Yeah, I do care about that. But that's
you do?
You know
so
what?
The people who voted for Yanukovych in a free and fair election that was monitored by the OSCE in 2010, when they voted for this guy, and then the Euromaidan insurrectionists removed him illegally, you don't think that the people in Donbass have a right to get pissed off about that?
If Joe Biden hired a bunch of Antifa super soldiers and set them loose on like MAGA protesters and had them like get shot in the street and tried to outlaw protesting, I don't believe for a second that you wouldn't be out there wanting him removed from office and
Ashley
potentially
Babbitt
with
was
violence
shot.
if necessary.
Ashley Babbitt was shot.
She was shot climbing through a window, dude. Come on. She was told to stop.
And the people in Ukraine were shot storming the legislative building. First of all, like if you talk about the Maidan massacre, they were literally storming. Do you want to go through this again? And I can give you articles about how they were, with petrol bombs, about how the time specifically of the so-called Maidan massacre, they were storming a legislative building and that 13 police officers were killed. I mean, we can go into all this.
Do you know how many protesters were shot?
108.
Okay, thank you. Then why are you acting like the cops are the victims?
And on January 6th, more protesters were shot than cops too. Ashley Babbitt was shot. I understand the police's argument. Here we have somebody who's storming the legislative building. Let's imagine for a second, January 6th was as bad as like the most hardcore Democrat portrayal of it. Let's just imagine for a second. And there actually was like a successful coup in which they stopped Biden, who had freely and fairly won the election, and they stopped him from taking power, and they reinstated Trump for another term. I think at that point, California probably would have a good argument for leaving the union. Yeah, in the same way America had a good argument for leaving the UK when they didn't give us representation. You want to tax us? You got to make sure our vote counts too. So, I mean, if you're all about, well, countries can't leave, nobody can leave, do you think America should have been able to leave the UK?
No, I'm not. I'm not all about that. That's not what I think. I have a very clear line where I morally think that countries should be able. Hold on a sec. Wait.
You don't think the USA should exist then?
Yeah, I do think the USA should exist. By the way, if in that scenario that you just stated there, I also think that people would have had a right to go out into the streets and fight to remove Donald Trump from office, rather than just California being like, well, fuck it, we're out.
No, they would have had.
lot of people who would have gone out and done some sort of revolution in order to remove Trump from office if he stole the election.
No, hold on. Fair enough. But let's assume for whatever reason, and we know the reason here because Kyiv in this case is overwhelmingly dominated by the pro-Euromaidaners, while the east of the country is primarily dominated by the anti-Euromaidaners. Let's imagine for a second that for whatever reason, MAGA cemented a firm hold over Washington, D.C., and they were able to control the White House and the legislative building, and then they replaced part of the Supreme Court with their sycophants, which is literally what happened in Ukraine. Yeah, if people in California didn't think that they'd be able to come in and stop that, or they didn't think they'd be able to come in and overturn that, I think at that point they have a very strong argument for leaving the union. Look, their vote was denied. Their self-representation was oppressed. They had a say in an election, and somebody comes in and then just undemocratically, unconstitutionally takes away that voice. I think that is a perfectly fine justification for an area to say, fuck you, we're leaving. This is what happened when America left the UK. They didn't want to give us a vote. You wanted to keep on taxing us? Fuck you, we're leaving. This happened with Crimea and the Donbass. You want to take away the person we elected for, take away our representation and still take our taxes? Fuck you, we're leaving. And that's what happened. Crimea had a vote and the Donbass had a vote for autonomy. And there's multiple polls on this that demonstrate that they did not want to be under the rule of Kyiv. So let me ask you very directly once again.
You actually think those referendums were not bogus?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, I don't think they are because they match all the polling both before and after by the UN, by Pew, by Zoyce, by all of these Western pollsters.
96%. What was it? 96 or 97% of Crimeans wanted to join Russia because that's what they voted in that.
Of the people that showed up.
It was like 86% of the people that showed up. Okay, please show me the poll that says 96% of Crimeans wanted to leave Ukraine and join Russia. Because there's no poll like that, I promise you.
So there is a poll. I've looked at
these polls.
Yeah, there's a poll. So the best quality data we have is from 2009 to 2011, in terms of before the Crimea leaving.
You're going to mention the EU poll, and it's 60%,
no,
isn't
I
it?
said UN.
60%?
No.
Yeah, sorry, the UN poll. Yeah, I know. I've seen this poll. It's the one that's on Wikipedia.
Right. Now, of course, this is before Euromaidan. Just keep in mind, which maybe the people of Crimea are going to be a little more upset.
60%.
This was multiple years before Euromaidan, and maybe Euromaidan pissed off the people there enough to say, "Yeah, fuck, we really do want to leave Ukraine."
No, I reject your framing.
I know you reject. I know you reject it, but we have polls immediately afterwards.
Okay. Stop, both of you, please.
The polls immediately
Hold on, both of you, stop.
I was in the middle of talking and she's talking over me.
Hold on. Neither, my audience cannot hear either of you because you're talking over each other. Finish up, Lactoid, concisely, and then let her respond. Go ahead.
Sure. So the United Nations poll from 2009 to 2011, it's years before Euromaidan, and it shows I think 14% of Crimeans would vote no to leaving and joining Russia. Like 63 or 64% would vote yes, and then the rest were undecided. So we already have only about 14% being a firm no already in 2011. Now, then Euromaidan happens, in which the president that Crimea voted for overwhelmingly gets unconstitutionally removed from power. And then there's a vote. Obviously, the Russian military comes in, combined with Crimean self-defense forces that are there. They take control of the peninsula, and they have a vote. The vote percentages aren't actually all that different from what the Western pollsters recorded only 1 month afterwards, when they went in and they polled people in Crimea. So I will give you the poll from 1 month afterwards from a Western poll source. I can't remember if it's Pew or Gallup, but I will send that to you. And it shows the amount of people that are yeah, we actually agree with this is 94% or 96% or something like that. So just give me a second. I'll find it for you.
Go ahead, Kalinda.
Okay. Have you read, I know that you like to cite Human Rights Watch and Amnesty reports. Have you read any of the UN reports about what life is like under Russian occupation in both Crimea and Donetsk and Luhansk and Kherson before it was free? Have you read any of those?
Yes. What does this have anything to do with the votes and the self-determination of the people that live there?
Because
you're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead.
No,
Let's stay specifically on this topic.
No, I'm not jumping ahead. This is relevant to your argument.
Wait, no, I'm very specifically citing the people there and the self-determination of what they want and the polls and the data we have. Now she's going to Human Rights Watch
This is
About
relevant
something
to your argument. I'm
Why is it
explaining why
relevant?
polling people who are under a repressive occupation is kind of bullshit, and you're not going to get an accurate picture. I'm
Oh,
not denying
no.
that there's a substantial portion of people in Crimea who wanted to leave Ukraine or who wanted greater autonomy from Ukraine. But I am denying that it was like 96% of the fucking people. And if you think that I'm going to believe, when Russia set up an exceedingly repressive atmosphere, they also brought a lot of their own people in. You're not allowed to speak your mind. The Crimean Tatars political organization was fucking banned. People were arrested and tortured arbitrarily. They imposed Russian law on the peninsula. I'm sorry, but no, when you're under that repressive regime where the only media you have access to is Russian approved media and your internet is censored, then yeah, I think it's kind of bullshit for me to, if you expect me to believe, oh my God, these people were polled and this polling was accurate, because totally everybody felt free to speak their mind. They fucking didn't.
So here's what's happening here. Here we go. This is from May 8th of 2014. I'm going to post it anyway, even though
I've seen the poll. I understand the polls that you're referring to.
I'm sure you do. Okay, so that's it's from Pew. Now I want to point out here's what's happening. Okay, so we have a at this point you're just ignoring what I'm saying and you're just rattling off pre-memorized parroted dogma is what you're doing.
No,
you're just. Let me finish.
Are you You need to answer what I just said.
Let me finish. You
need to explain why polling
I'm
talking.
talking.
Is
Wick,
legit.
Wick, come on. I'm specifically going to refer. I'm going to answer this very directly. I'm just explaining to the audience what very specifically is happening right now. Okay. What's happening is I have a UN poll from 2009 to 2011 that demonstrates that only 14%, as of the last poll, it was in 2011, of people in Crimea would vote against a measure to leave Ukraine and join Russia. Then I've cited the actual referendum results where, yes, it was 96% or somewhere around there, but only 80% of people in Crimea actually showed up because it was boycotted by the opposition. So really, we can assume that a large part of that 20% that didn't show up and vote, a very large part, would have voted no. So if you assume that, because again, it was boycotted by the opposition very explicitly, if you this actually might be in the Wikipedia, it's about so you could estimate maybe it's 20 to 23%. Yeah, okay. So 20 to 23% of people, I guess, would have then been no. So when you look at it, then it's okay, so 23 or something percent, 22, 23% estimation. It's actually not 96% of people voting yes. It's more like 77, somewhere around there, perhaps. Which actually, that 77% is not far off of what the UN 2011 polling was, and it is also very close to what I just posted, the Pew data in which they went in May. You are just going to say, well, we can't trust the data that was gathered in May of 2014 because they're living under Russian oppression. So we just have to ignore the Pew data. And then I guess we also can't trust the referendum results because, hey, the Russians were there. And then I guess we also can't trust the EU results because I guess they were done poorly, I suppose. I'm literally giving you just all the evidence there is from reputable sources like Pew and the UN, and you're going to have some bullshit reason as to hand wave them away. Every time.
Okay. Give the
I'm
mic
not.
to Kalinda to let her respond. Go ahead, Kalinda.
Okay. No, I'm not. I'm not denying these UN polling numbers, although I think it's kind of bullshit that you are cherry picking out the yes and no shit for if the referendum were held to join the Russian. When you look at when they're given more choices, then the number goes down. And it's
you said you watched the debate with Dylan.
Hold on,
I literally went over this on stream with Dylan.
Hold on.
So what was my response?
You had some bullshit response to that I was not convinced by what you said. I don't remember exactly what it was. I was actually rewatching that before this started, but I did not get to it. But I'm just saying,
I'm not cherry picking.
They gave you different questions. They were given different questions though.
Okay.
When given more options, then the number of them who chose to become part of the Russian Federation decreases.
Mm-hmm. So I had a response to Dylan. I understand you're just saying. You said that you watched all my debates. In fact, a large portion of the debate I had with Dylan Lonerbox specifically was going over this specific data. The poll in question, the UN poll in question, has multiple questions. You're right. The first question is straight up: if you could vote today to have the peninsula of Crimea leave Ukraine and join Russia, how would you vote? Only 14% said no, over 60% said yes, and the rest, like over 60%. I don't remember the exact percentage. I think it's 64, but I could be wrong. And the rest of them were undecided. Then there's more questions on the poll. You're right. When you break it down, there are more questions. We can, if you want to, Wick, we can bring up that section of the poll and go over it all again
we don't
right
have
now.
to.
And I know we don't have to, because when you look at the other questions, all of them indicate some preference of Russia over Ukraine if other options aren't available. So the number one option is just straight up joining Russia directly. There are other options, including being a separate country. This is also a different option. However, in terms of staying part of Ukraine, this is overwhelmingly the smallest percentage, even in
No,
the
it's
broader
not.
question poll.
24%. 24%.
I'm gonna bring it up.
24 to 19%
Send
stay
it
in
to me and we
Ukraine
can
with greater
we can show it
autonomy,
on screen and we
or
can go through it.
versus become part of Russia, which was went from 46 to in 2009 and then 41 in 2011.
Yeah, greater autonomy, meaning they control
Those
all their
were
politics.
but that's still not the same thing as joining Russia, is it?
You
Also,
gotta,
by the way,
you got to give me the poll, one of you.
I just want to say that even though Crimea might have the right to leave Ukraine, you know, like as like a human rights thing or whatever, or as like a we agree that nations have the right to self-determination, Ukraine also has just as much of a right to respond back and say no, because we're all part of the same country.
That's
and
crazy.
Pragmatically, if every fucking region were just allowed to secede for whatever fucking reason they felt like it, then no, we just wouldn't have countries anymore.
I didn't say that every country can just secede if they feel like it. I'm saying that countries get to secede if certain conditions are met. If you take away their level, their say in the system, if you take away their vote, then and their self-determination as a people, if you violate the contract, the constitutional contract that is made with that area and made with those people, then they do get to leave.
Both of you, you asked me to go through this.
Wait.
And hold on, Kalinda, please.
Let's go through it.
You realize that Zelensky was like supported primarily by people in the eastern and central parts of Ukraine, right? They picked him. He was their guy. He was born from that part of the country.
No, he wasn't.
So what?
No,
now you're just gonna say that like they're not allowed, that like, oh yes, they were being denied their right, even though he was their fucking guy.
Oh no. Okay, we're gonna. You want to
go on
that? I know you want to jump to that topic. We'll address that too in a second. But first, we're gonna.
Serious? Did you not look at the results?
I did. Yeah. Hey, did you know that the Ukrainian election has a 2-cycle? You know, there's a first term, or there's a first cycle and a second cycle. Okay, who won the first cycle in the Donbass? Was it Zelensky?
Zelensky got like
in the first first round. Was it Zelensky?
He was still their guy. They still voted for him
in the first round. Hold on. In the first round, since you want to distract from the Crimean thing, in the first round in the Donbass, was it Zelensky?
No, it was there was another guy, but that guy. Yeah, he only got like a very small percentage of the vote, though. He didn't make it to the second
overall round. Because he lost horribly in the West, but he won. He was number 1 in the Donbass, and he was the pro-Russian guy. And then in the second round of elections, because he's eliminated now, you have it between Zelensky and Petro Poroshenko, who is far more right-wing and far more like a nationalist than Zelensky was at the time. So of course, a pro-Russian is going to prefer Zelensky to Petro Poroshenko. But in the first round of voting, they voted for Boyko, who was a pro-Russian guy.
Zelensky was also talking. Yes, people in the Donbass wanted to be closer to Russia. It doesn't mean they wanted to join Russia.
Okay.
I know you think these things are the same.
Let's talk about the Crimean.
Does no one want to like?
Okay, no, you said Zelensky's their guy.
All of you.
Well, I mean, he was though. He was also like the peace candidate too.
Kalinda, please.
Like he wanted like ceasefires.
We're gonna get to it.
Their guy, they didn't vote for in the first round.
We're gonna get to it. I promise. I'll let you guys get to it. But you guys wanted to argue with this, and I do want to go over it.
When the other choice was Petro.
I'm so sorry. That's how democracy works.
Are we not doing this? I guess.
Well, no, we're doing it. We're doing it. Bring it up.
Am I just chopped liver over here? Is no one going to listen to me?
Bring it up.
Go ahead, Rick.
Okay,
sorry.
If a referendum was held on the annexation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea to Russia, how would you vote? And then they have several quarters here from the years 2009 to 2011. Yes, in 2009 was 70, and it goes to into 2011 it goes to 65.6% of yes,
65.6,
14.2% saying no, and 20.2% undecided. Then
Sure.
when it breaks down, hold on.
You're going to scroll out a little bit in order to
Yeah.
get all this data.
Give me a second. God, where'd the poll go?
It's further up. And I know,
Okay.
yeah, when you make it bigger, it fucks it up.
Yeah, whatever. You guys got. I'm trying to
Sure.
get it so you guys can read it, but we're just gonna have
Yeah.
to go through it.
So,
So when there's different
Can I-
options,
can I explain what it means?
Hold on, no. Hold on.
Oh God.
Let me read it, and then you guys can debate about it all you want. But you're gonna let me read this out. There are different opinions about what status should be optimal for the autonomous Republic of Crimea. Which of the options below most closely matches your views? In your opinion, the autonomous Republic of Crimea should be, and then again, they have a bunch of votes. We're going to use the 2011 one. 41% say become part of the Russian Federation. 11% say become an independent state. 19.1% says stay in Ukraine with greater autonomy. 12.4% say stay in Ukraine with the same level of autonomy. 0.1% say stay in Ukraine with a reduced autonomy. 6.1% say become a normal region of Ukraine. 2% say become a region under the direct control of the president. And 8.3% are undecided. That was the last, I guess, data collected by this poll.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I clarify a very
so-
important thing? The first question and the second question are both part of the same poll sent to the same
Yeah,
people.
I know.
Okay, good.
I know. I'm just saying, when given greater choices, like the spread changes. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they were all gung ho about joining Russia.
Now let me
That's
respond.
all I'm saying.
Yes, let me respond. So when you look at the second question, so you have the first question very specifically about if the choice is put forward to you today, would you vote to leave or not? Then you have those percentages, and then the second question breaks down what is your most preferred outcome. So we have 41% of people who are saying very specifically, if I could have any option I wanted, 41% are very gung ho, we're joining Russia. 11% said, well, if I could have any option, I'd want to become an independent state, but if I can't have an independent state, I would want to join Russia. Do you understand why that's the case?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. And then you have
Yeah,
19%
sure.
saying they would prefer to stay in Ukraine with greater autonomy as in terms of control of local elections, control of local education policy, all this. But if I can't have that, I would want to join Russia. You understand?
Yeah, I get that, but like
Okay.
again, that doesn't. I'm saying that still doesn't mean that they're all gung ho about joining Russia. And also, again, at the end of the day, and I'm sorry, but like I don't think that this whole thing about, oh man, the supposed coup for a president who violated like the freedom of assembly provisions of the Constitution, this now suddenly means that all of these parts of the country just like get to leave, even though, by the way, again, Yanukovych campaigned on greater integration with Europe and also on like
Reflecting.
keeping up good relations with Russia, and he was moving along the association agreement.
Yep,
He
you're
probably
deflecting
would have
now.
signed
done
it
with the-
absent Russian pressure.
In a second. So what that polling demonstrably shows is the people of Crimea did not want to be ruled by Kiev. They didn't. They were overwhelmingly willing to go to Russia as long as they didn't have to be ruled by Kiev. If
They weren't really.
Autonomy means not being ruled by Kiev. That's what that means. What do you think
But they
autonomy
weren't really
means?
being ruled by Kiev. They had like their own constitution and whatnot.
No, that constitution was abolished in 1995 when the Ukrainians invaded, and they formed a new constitution, the 1996 constitution, that included Crimea.
They still
didn't have their own.
Yeah, they
No,
did.
not at the
They
time.
had a constitution.
Okay, just to be clear, gang,
Hold
in about
on.
5 minutes, I'm going to read super chats to both of you, and
That's
I am
great.
going to do that. And
Okay.
we are going
Okay,
to.
so I
go through that.
Okay, so I wanted to because you were deflecting a little bit when we had the poll up. You started going back to, well, I just don't think the people have the right to self-determination to leave if their guy gets couped because of the quote-unquote dictatorship
because
laws in
I don't-
January of 2014, the right to assembly. Once again, I tried to go back and address this, but then you want to talk about trade policy because I guess that was next on your list. The reason why it's important to establish that there were riots, there was people who were armed, there was cops that were being attacked, This was a full-on insurrection at this point in January. Absolutely, the president does get to restrict freedom of assembly during these times. Currently, there are assemblies that are declared illegal in America, for example, where you have the freedom of assembly, but you don't have the freedom to riot. The governor is perfectly allowed to say, hey, you guys must leave the area. There's people breaking shit. There's people occupying government buildings. There's people throwing firecrackers. There's people attacking cops with sticks and petrol bombs. You guys have to leave. This is an illegal riot at this point. In America, we do this, and we have freedom of assembly. In Ukraine, when these laws were passed, and when Yanukovych was proposing this in January of 2014, the insurrection was completely underway. And as I showed you before, they were occupying government buildings as early as November 25th of 2013. So we have people who are occupying government buildings, rioting and destroying shit. And yeah, they say, you guys have to vacate. You guys have to disperse. You guys have to leave because of course. Because of course. That does not mean if a lawful order comes down, you guys have to disperse because you guys are rioting, occupying government buildings and destroying shit and attacking cops. That does not mean that you get to coup the president. And on top of all that, they didn't even cite that as the reason why they got rid of Yanukovych. They made up some dumb reason saying he fled despite the fact he was still in the country.
Yeah, because they probably didn't want to because there was a bunch of reasons. Also, Yanukovych did leave, and he didn't really say anything about where he was
After the
going.
vote.
Like he snuck out. No, it wasn't. He left.
He was
Kyiv
on TV.
before the vote.
Hold on.
Yeah,
He was
I know
on
that
TV
he was on TV.
on the 22nd.
Yes.
Yeah, and they
yes,
had the
I
vote on the
know,
22nd.
I'm aware. Yeah, I know. When
So-
he said that he wasn't going to resign.
Yeah, in Kharkiv.
Which-
So they knew he was in Kharkiv.
Yeah, they did. Actually, I think he was there because he was attending some event, and then
that's why he was there.
And then he wanted to leave there. And they were going to stop him at the Donetsk airport, I think, and then he went to Crimea, and he got exfilled by the Russians.
Yeah, let me give it.
I
Let me
think
give a
that
brief
was the
timeline. Yeah,
general
you're
order.
you're not too far off. So
it's brief because
November-
in about a minute I'm going to read these super chats.
fair enough. It was February 21st. He signed he signs an agreement in order to call early elections later in 2014. February
December
22nd.
at the latest.
Sure. I
By
think
the
it
way,
was
the
October, December.
protesters
I don't know exactly the
rejected
date.
this. Just FYI,
Doesn't
they
matter
wanted
what
him
they-
gone immediately.
They're insurrectionists. They're not lawful authorities. So February 22nd, he does leave Kyiv and he goes to Kharkiv. You're right, to attend an assemblage of people who support him, because at this time, Euromaidan did not have support of most Ukrainians. I can send you a poll on this. Most Ukrainians, let me be clear. About 45% of Ukrainians supported Euromaidan and 48% opposed it at this time. So it's not, you're right, it's not actually, it's not most Ukrainians opposing Euromaidan, but it's the plurality of Ukrainians opposed to Euromaidan. So it's 48% to 45%. So the supporters of Euromaidan are in the minority at this point. And so he goes to Kharkiv. The most recent
kind of a
poll
weird
data.
way to describe it. Also,
Okay.
I think I've seen multiple
I'll-
polls. It's kind of
wait,
all over the place, but
Okay.
whatever.
You can have your super chat in just 1 second, please. And then on February 22nd, he goes to Kharkiv. That's when they have the illegal vote, which you're not denying that it's illegal according to their constitution, right? You're not going to deny that?
If you have a very strict literal reading of the Constitution, sure.
Okay, I think even
But
a non-strict reading of the Constitution
if you're
says you
being
can't just vote off the
pragmatic,
president.
if you're being pragmatic and you acknowledge that the country was descending into chaos and that people wanted Yanukovych out, and if it did not happen, then everything probably would have gotten way, way worse. Then I
minority of
don't
people wanted
really
him out.
have too much of a problem with it.
A minority of
way-
people wanted him out.
I think
Okay.
it's very funny to describe literally single digit differences between these two things, and then to say it was a minority of people.
Yeah, they didn't have the
You're kind of
majority.
playing-
It's
that
not like this
word
is a
there
massive
is-
popular uprising.
Here we go. We will get back to this.
A large
particular
portion of the country
Yeah, I
in
promise
the
we're
West.
gonna
When
get back
half
to
the
the hold
country
on. I
supports
promise.
something, yeah, I would say it's a massive
Yeah.
popular
We're gonna
uprising.
give it to we're gonna get through these super chats and then we
Also,
are going...
hold on. Before you go, Wick, I just want to say one last thing. I just want to say that there was a great many people, I think it was like 70-something% at Euromaidan who weren't even really there because they were mad about the association agreement. They were mad about the repression that was taking place after like the November 30th happened, when the protesters came in and started like beating up the cops came in and started beating up unarmed protesters. That's what really got people to come out even harder into the streets. It wasn't so much the other thing. Sure, some people there was, I think 50% of people said they cared about that, but a lot more people, their primary thing was, I'm really fucking mad about this repression. Anyway, sorry, go ahead, Wick.
Sure, no problem. 10 euros, and we'll just go through them all. 10 euros from Prussian Menace to say thank you, Wick, for all that you do. Lactoid is my favorite person to dislike. Thank you for the 10 euros.
You already read that one.
You already read that one.
I'm going through them all so I don't miss one. $10 from Doobie. I took some of Zelensky's cocaine money to send this message. Well, thank you for the $10. $10 more from Doobie. Kalinda will join the long list of Azov-funded, democracy-hating, Russophobic shills to fall before Lactoid's moral clarity and massive brain. Thank you for the $10. And more dollars from Doobie. He likes to give me money.
Jesus
I like to
Christ.
take his money. She trained for this battle for 57 months. This was the day she was supposed to ascend among law-hating
57 months?
Still clinging to the Red Scare. To Comrade Lactoid, this is just another Friday. Okay, thank you for the 10.
57, okay.
$10 from Doobie to say Kalinda's transparent debate tactics will not work. Angry chewing will not save you. Well, thank you for the $10.
Transparent debate tactics.
$5 from Gelatinous Rube. Total Lactoid victory. Thank you for the $5. Well, we're not done yet, gang, so hang in there. $10 from Doobie.
Yes, I'm so glad your conservative audience just loves Lactoid so much.
Just reading the super chats. So
I've talked to all these people, by the way. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, I know.
It's basically 3 people at this point. It's Doobie, Gelatinous Rube, and Prussian Menace. We're gonna get to it though. Doobie for $10 says you're outraged by January 6th, but celebrated a successful violent overthrow of an elected government in Ukraine. Why do liberal values like rule of law and democracy only matter when they're convenient? $10 more from Doobie. I'm sorry. Does Kalinda support the discriminatory laws imposed on ethnic Russians after the government was overthrown? Does she even know what they are? They've been banning Russian culture and language. You can respond to that one if you like.
Please, I'd like to know where they were banning Russian culture before the 2022 invasion. They weren't even really banning Russian culture. What the fuck is this? Does Doobie know that there are entire fucking battalions in, like, Ukraine that speak Russian that are full of Ukrainians? Does he know that it's, in fact, not illegal to walk down the street and speak Ukrainian? Also, does he know that actually what he just said applies to areas in Ukraine that have been occupied by Russia? Russia is Russifying occupied territories of Ukraine.
Well, I'm sure
Anyway.
he will let us know if he knows about those things, and hopefully with another $10. $10 for Gelatinous Rube. Why are Kalinda's yes men being so stingy with their super chats? I hope their ethnicity has nothing to do with it.
Oh my god.
Okay, that's
they're all probably in my chat.
Crazy. $10 from Doobie. In addition to the language, culture, media bans, they also banned the Russian Orthodox Church. I thought liberals were supposed to support religious freedom. Do liberals stand for anything anymore?
No, they didn't. Oh my fucking god. They banned the Ukrainian Orthodox Church that was associated with Moscow. Do I think that was heavy-handed? Yes, I do. However, I would like to present to you the fact that if you go to Russian-occupied territory, you can't practice like literally any religion except what Russia allows you to do. Okay? And if you try to give sermons in Ukrainian, you're probably going to get arrested and have the shit kicked out of you. Like, everybody likes to equalize these two sides and act like what Ukraine is doing is so much worse, but it's just not. And also, by the way, there is also like a Ukrainian Orthodox Church that's basically not the Moscow edition. That's basically the same shit as like the one that they banned. So like, there's not really much difference between the two of them. So I feel like this isn't particularly relevant. Ukraine is actually pretty good about religious freedom, especially compared to Russia, especially compared to Russian occupied territories.
Okay. $5 from
for an Eastern European country, at least.
Yeah. $5.
Can I respond to some of the things that Kalinda said, or do you want to make it through super chats?
Let's make it through super chats, but take a note,
Okay.
and then I can let you. Okay.
Sure.
$5 from Kung Fu Joe. White Christians are fighting and dying on two fronts, but Netanyahu and Zelensky are neither. Pattern recognition, y'all. Thank you for the $5. $5 from Audacity to say Alish 2 ain't doing so good. $10 from Doobie. The language ban started in 2019. Thank you for confirming my suspicion.
That wasn't a language ban.
That you only did
That's
research
not
on
what
the
language
pro-Ukraine
bans
narrative.
are.
Okay. And $5
No,
from
I
Ellen.
didn't actually.
For W Lactoid, parentheses, I love Ukraine. I just also like Lactoid, end parentheses. Close parentheses. And with that, the super chats are good. Now you said I do want to give the mic to Kalinda first, so because I did say I'd give it to her after super chats. But then when you get the mic back, Lactoid, you can address any points you like. So Kalinda, well, let me ask you this question. I guess since I've had questions to maybe drive this conversation into a direction, but we'll see. Kalinda, let's just grant for the moment that Ukraine was in the wrong. Euromaidan was in the wrong. It was unconstitutional. Would that even change your opinion regarding the legality or the justification of this war, or whether or not the U.S. should support Ukraine?
And it also wouldn't change my opinion that Russia was wrong to come in and invade Crimea, or that Russia was wrong to go into the Donbass, because all of that is bullshit. This stuff, like even if Euromaidan was wrong, none of that justifies Russia intervening or whatever.
Elaborate on that.
I would say the only thing that ever justifies a state invading another state or sending in their troops or whatever in order to like support secessionist rebels and whatnot would be like if there was like fucking genocide going on or something. And even though Russia tried to claim that, there was not genocide going on. The UN found this. There are UN reports that talk about this. And yes, they discuss the fact that Ukraine was, especially in 2014, in fact, committing human rights violations against civilians in Donbass, and that Russia was doing the same thing. All the human rights reports that Lactoid likes to cite, the Amnesty International and the Human Rights Watch and all of those ones, they all say that that Russia was also doing really bad shit in the occupied separatist controlled territories. Russia had no right to intervene here. Russia tried to claim that there was a genocide of ethnic Russians going on, but that was like bullshit. And the UN said that violence specifically against Russian speakers was heavily exaggerated. Anyway,
I have a lot to go through. Okay. All right. So I think it's kind of telling. I hope people caught this when somebody said, "Hey, there's like a bunch of language and culture bans," and Kalinda scoffed. She was like, "Ha, that wasn't even happening before 2022." What about since 2022, Kalinda? Absolutely, it's been happening. There are language. There are multiple bans on. For example, in 2023, a particularly strict version was passed in Kiev called, it was a ban on cultural language product, Russian cultural language product. That is specifically what is banned. You are not publicly allowed to sing Russian songs unless the artist very specifically is put on a whitelist that the Ukrainian government approves of. But the language is the thing that is banned, right? If you want to sing a song in Russian, this is not allowed in public. If you want to read a book in Russian, this is not allowed in Kiev. If you, in public, it is absolutely, yes. Do you not know this? Do you not know that these bans currently exist in Kiev?
It is not as restrictive as you say that it is. Do you actually think that like no one can, do you think no one can speak Russian in public in Ukraine? That like if people talk to each other in Russian, that they'll get arrested?
No, they won't get arrested. It is very specifically Russian language cultural product. It is targeting the Russian culture here, the Russian language cultural product. This targets books, this part targets media, this targets songs, this targets movies, shows, all of these things. You cannot play that in public in Kiev. That is
all of which you
against
can still
the law.
Have in the privacy of your own home, by the way.
Yes, in the privacy of your own home.
Hold on.
But this is a ban. This is a ban on public presentation based on a cultural.
Can I just say?
No, you can in just a second. It's a ban on something based on the cultural underpinnings, the Russian cultural underpinnings. This is scary. This is like motivated in some respects. If you're targeting the culture of another people's, this is some ethnic supremacy shit going on. Why is it okay to ban Russian language cultural product in your capital city?
Go ahead, Kalinda.
Can I answer now?
Yes, go ahead, Kalinda.
Okay, first of all, And because I did say, when I was doing my research into this, okay, no, I was not just spewing all the Ukraine talking points like Doobie said. I did do a bunch of research into this. And the conclusion that I came to is that, yes, in fact, there are things that Ukraine has done that I find to be heavy handed. And this is one of them. I think that this goes too far. And I do not like this. However, I want you to now hear, I want to hear you tell me that this is worse than what Russia is doing in the occupied territories to Ukraine or to the Ukrainian culture and language and the Russification that's going on there. Because there is still no difference. And there is nothing you can point to that Ukraine has done that is worse than what Russia has done. You are talking about a country that has, for the last like 300 fucking years, basically forced its culture upon its neighbor and tried to erase its language and moved Russians in order to Russify them. And now you're mad, you know, because that, oh my God, they're like trying to do something about this. Do I think they're going too far with it? Yeah, I do. But if you think that this is worse or the same as what Russia is doing, then like you are delusional, and I don't think you live in reality.
Okay, I'm glad you don't think I live in reality. I've consistently proven you wrong, or on every contention that we've had, I've been able to explain and go into, despite the fact
Can
that
you
I think you said
acknowledge that
before
what
this.
Russia is
Can I
doing is
explain?
worse?
Hold on. You gotta let
Despite the fact that-
Lactoid finish,
yeah.
but I would like you to answer her question.
I'm going to answer. You know I'm going to answer with this entire fucking debate. I've answered. Yes, sometimes I'll give a preface, but I have answered every question. The preface here is yes, I do know about what's going on in this conflict. I know that you said I don't, but I do. I'm aware that there is oppression happening of ethnic Ukrainians in the occupied territories. That is
It's
happening.
not ethnic Ukrainians. It's the Ukrainian language and culture. It's not about whether they're ethnic Ukrainian or not.
Okay, ethnicity is okay. You don't ethnicity in this. So do you know what ethnicity means? I mean, this is a much longer conversation, but parts of ethnicity is language and culture.
I understand how you're using ethnicity. Never mind. I thought you were using it differently. If you're using it like that, that's fine. Yeah, sure, whatever.
Yes,
it's fine.
yes. So I understand this is happening.
That.
It's not. It is not as bad in. I can't say that in every single case. You're not like my understanding of the current oppression that's happening right now is you have localities and gangs of people that are very vigorously supporting kind of the pro-Russian cause at this point, and they are
it's not quite
oppressing.
Like that, no.
And they are and they are
it's more than that, but I'll wait.
And they are oppressing. Yes, you can disagree in a second. They are oppressing Ukrainians there. It is not official government policy to do these things. The Russian Federation has not passed legislation to restrict the Ukrainian language within Russia. This is not a thing. It does not have the official seal of approval of the Russian government in the same way, and this is one of in this way I think the Ukrainian is much worse. Which the Ukrainian action is much worse. In that, with the Ukrainian action, they very specifically put severe restrictions. They call it bans. The EU calls it bans, by the way. Bans on Russian language and Russian language cultural product and other elements of culture too. We talked about the ban that is currently active in Kiev. There is another ban that's active across the entire country. It's not as intense as the Kiev one, but it is a ban on what you can portray, what you can play on media. And in 2019, there were restrictions on how much Russian language that you could play on radio stations and TV. Yes, these restrictions were, now I agree with you, they weren't nearly as harsh as the 2022 and the 2023 bans, but there were restrictions being put in place in 2019. And another thing that Doobie brought up, so I'm going to address the super chat pretty directly, they did ban an entire church, the Russian Orthodox Church. And I'm glad that you think it was heavy-handed. The Pope thinks so too. He condemned that. The EU condemned that. Everybody's condemning it because it was incredibly heavy-handed. Because it's not like this is not like they went into specific churches and found spies and arrested them. I would understand that. Okay, during warfare, fair enough. What they did is they said an entire
kept doing.
Yeah, sure. I understand that of a country. But what they did was they an entire church apparatus, a religious sect, they designated that as an enemy of the state, and they have been banning it. They have been kicking out the clergy, and they've been preventing people from going to that church when that church has been in that area since the 1600s. That is the canonical Orthodox Church. And yes, it's going to have ties in the same way that the Catholics are going to have ties to the Pope. It's going to have ties to the Moscow Patriarchate, but that's their religion. So you have these Ukrainians, the government officials that are banning religious belief and religious worship, and they're banning language and culture. How is this not ethnic persecution?
Okay, two things I want Kalinda to be able to answer that. But also, Doobie sent me a video I'm supposed to play, and he paid me
Oh my
money to do
God.
that.
Doobie's not part of this debate. Please
understand.
stop. Okay.
I mean, if he pays you enough money, I think he might be.
Anyway,
No, that's so
Hold on,
stupid.
Kalinda.
If that's the case,
on,
then
Kalinda.
like I'm gonna
Kalinda.
then like I get to get somebody to come in here too. I'm not interested
Sure.
in debating with Doobie. Tell Doobie
he's
that
gotta pay
Doobie,
Wick.
if you want to have that argument with me,
Hold on,
then you can come
it's a
have it
meme.
with me
it's
later.
like a little meme video, but fair enough. Here, Kalinda. Answer. Well, I want to give you the mic, but his portrayal of the Russian oppression, or the people who are oppressing Ukrainians in Russia-controlled territories, is that accurate? Why or why not?
No, it's not. Have you read any of the UN reports? That's not accurate. Russia imposed Russian
Explain
law
what
on
the
Ukraine.
accurate portion is. Go ahead.
Okay, Russia imposed Russian law on the occupied territories of Ukraine. That law requires that you have to teach classes in Russian. Okay, there is no like Ukrainian learning or whatever. They didn't come out and say we're banning Ukrainian. You know why? It's a thing that they like to do because they don't want to like, it's like plausible deniability and shit. But they did, like, Ukrainian is still effectively banned and bad things will happen to you. By the way, way worse than what will happen to you if you get caught like playing music under that law that you cited, and I believe that like you could look it up for me, but I believe it is like a fucking fine. In occupied territory, if you are caught breaking these rules, you will go to prison and you will be tortured because that's the kind of shit that they will do to you there. Yeah, they impose Russian law. And Russian law, by the way, is incredibly strict on a whole bunch of things. There's all kinds of censorship. You're not allowed to say certain things. It's like, I don't know if you're aware or not, but like also like the internet is currently being censored in Russia, which is one of the other things that they did in the occupied territories. They will, when you go through the checkpoint, the soldiers will stop and they will take your phone and they will search it. And if they find anything on there that looks bad, or like if you said the wrong thing in a group chat or whatever, then like they'll fucking arrest you. It is so much worse. And it is so much like, it is not the same.
Okay. I think two things. The first thing is it is bad what's happening in Ukraine. Before, you sort of hinted at what the justification that a lot of Ukrainians give, which is essentially a kind of ethnic revenge. That like, well, in the past, the Russians were doing this to us. Hold on, I'll let you finish. In the past, the Russians were doing this to us for all these years. It was entirely unjustified. It was unfair. Now we have to do it to them. I think that is just like, this is a reason that's often given. I think that it's entirely irrelevant. The people, if you're going to claim sovereignty over groups of people, especially if they want to be separate, and you claim no, they're actually part of Ukraine, then you certainly can't oppress their ethnicity. You can't oppress their language and culture and religious beliefs, which is happening according to our own 2024 Human Rights Report. From the United States. This is under the Biden administration, not under the Trump administration. They found massive human rights abuses within Ukraine by the Ukrainian government, including credible allegations of torture and oppression.
I'm aware that they do that.
Yes, they do. Yeah. So in the same, you're very concerned, and I understand. Yes, these localities in the occupied areas, there absolutely are problems. I will admit that. Of course, but again, I'm not giving them $200 billion. I'm not the one that is funding these people. But when you have Ukraine that is doing the same shit, or in some case, and putting the official seal of government approval on it, and then our own intelligence is saying that they're committing torture, the same thing that you had just had a big problem with, and they had been doing this for a long time, and they had been disproportionately committing war crimes in the Donbass going back to 2014. There's a reason why most civilian casualties
Russia
were in
was committing
the separatist
war
areas.
In the Donbass. Also, that was in 2014 was the highest civilian casualties.
2014,
after that, they started going down.
They went down, but between 2014 and 2015 was the peak. But again, it was dramatically disproportionately within the separatist areas. And why was it dramatically disproportionate?
Yeah, that's where the fighting was.
Yes, well, it was not only the fighting, but it was also because multiple human rights agencies very specifically found that the Ukrainian military was firing cluster missiles into civilian areas.
And the Russian military. Oh, and also, you know what else those human rights people found? You know what else those human rights reports found? Guess who was operating in those areas where they fired the cluster bombs? It was the separatists that they were fighting against. I love that you leave that out. And the human rights reports lambasted for that too.
That's not true at all. Hold on, wait. So I agree
was
that there
in the
were
Human
firing.
Rights
Stop.
Watch
Yeah,
report.
I agree. They were firing missiles at separatist military positions too. Of course, this was happening. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is they were very specifically condemned for firing cluster missils into heavily populated urban areas, civilian areas.
Yeah,
This
where
is why
there
a
were
dramatic.
militants operating.
No, they were militant. I'm sure there was like soldiers maybe walking around or stationed because
No,
they were
that's
living in that
what
urban
the
environment.
report said. They said
No,
there were militants operating there, and those were the
no,
targets. And like,
no.
I think there was one instance where there were reports previously of militants being there, and then like the Ukrainians fired rockets into that area after the militants had gone. So they probably had old info.
Yeah,
Like, I'm not
we must be
necessarily
thinking. We
saying
must
this,
be
but, like,
thinking
I'm
of.
just saying.
Okay, now it's old info. Look, maybe we're looking at different reports. I'm telling you that they were very specifically condemned by Human Rights Watch. They've been condemned by Amnesty International very specifically because they've
Yeah,
been
they were.
firing. Oh, stop.
They-
Let me finish. They've been firing indiscriminate cluster missile attacks. Now, you're right. The separatists were also firing cluster missiles, but the ratio between the two is dramatically off kilter. Like the vast majority, like over 80% of all the civilian casualties that were happening were in the separatist areas. The vast majority of cluster missiles were being fired into civilian areas in the the separatist areas of Donbass. And this was part of the broader Ukrainian quote unquote counter-terrorist operation they were launching in 2014. Yes, and they were denying the terms that were agreed to in Minsk II. I don't know how much you know about the Minsk I and Minsk II agreements, but in the Minsk II agreement, the DPR and the LPR were very specifically given self-determination, the fact that they got to have elections and choose their own leaders, and this was rejected by Ukraine at the last minute. They said, no, you're not allowed to have your own elections. So even
Both
when
sides
there's a
broke
good
that
faith attempt,
agreement, by the way.
there's what?
I said both sides broke that agreement, by the way.
Yeah, there were minor ceasefire, there's like shelling disputes, but the key part of the agreement of
Yeah,
hey,
and Russia also didn't pull
to
its
establish
troops
it.
out
This
of
is
out of the occupied
Minsk,
territory.
Minsk one, Minsk one.
Or
There was
two.
no Minsk
They didn't
two
pull
had
out
a
their
stop.
troops. There
This is
were
false.
Russian troops.
Minsk 2, there was a lot of heavy weaponry that was pulled back from the front lines. This absolutely was the case in Minsk 2.
And
The key
foreign
part of
troops.
the
Russia
key
never
part of
pulled out
the
their
key
foreign
part,
troops.
we had our advisors there in Ukraine at the same time. We had the United States did.
There weren't
We were
just
giving them.
Russian
We were giving them.
advisors.
Stop
There were
cutting me off.
Russian troops.
There were Russian specialists and operatives that were in the Donbass at the time. There were American specialists and operatives that were in Ukraine at that time. This was happening. The point that I'm trying to make that you keep cutting me off is that the key part of the Minsk II agreement, which is, hey, we should have autonomy because of the events of Euromaidan, just like a year or two earlier. We should have autonomy. We should be able to run our own elections, and this can solve this. We can have autonomy. We're like marginally still part of Ukraine, but we run our own affairs. What was Ukraine's position on that? They said no. They said, no, you don't get to have your own elections. This is a fundamentally anti-democratic regime. They don't want people to have self-determination. This is the whole point. This is why they've launched attacks. This is why they've been attacking since 2014. This is why they couped the president. They couldn't win an election, so they couped the guy that won.
You think that the Ukrainian military was just willy-nilly firing into civilian areas for the lulz? Even though all the human rights reports that I looked at, they were shooting at like soldiers who were operating out of those areas. And Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International both lambasted and said the separatists need to not do this because this is also a war crime.
Yes, I am sure that when the Ukrainian military was firing cluster missiles, that was against international law and was specifically condemned by these organizations.
By the way, cluster munitions aren't against international law.
They were, when you fire them in civilian areas indiscriminately, yes, it is against international law. This is why these agencies.
Not.
This is why these agencies condemned it and said it was illegal.
Hold on. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch are bullshit. Okay, I really only care about what the fucking UN.
You guys, this has been like. I just want to say this has been like the most.
The UN's accused them of this too in a 2015 report.
Lactoid, can I not finish a sentence? Hold on, both of you will shut up when I'm talking. I'm kind of getting tired of this, right? You both interrupt me, and that needs to end, right? This has been one of the most acidic debates I think I've hosted in
I didn't start
a year. It's been really, really. Everyone's.
I'm sorry. I just get real triggered by people like justifying, invasions of regimes that are just trying to rebuild their empire.
I get it, but I just want to.
You're very morally outraged.
Hold on. I want everyone to take it down like a notch, and let people finish their fucking sentences, and then we can get it. And also keep the monologuing to a minimum, okay? Kalinda, I forgot who I interrupted. Fuck. Kalinda, I think I interrupted you, so I'm going to give the mic back to you. Go ahead. What's your strongest argument for why the U.S. should continue to support Ukraine?
No, I just want to say, if you're targeting soldiers and they are in a civilian area, how is that indiscriminate? Indiscriminate would just be that you're dropping bombs everywhere willy-nilly and you don't actually have a target.
Okay, I will respond to this. The reason why these agencies that you just, I guess, kind of masked off right there and just said, well, actually, they're all bullshit.
Well, no, it's not because of what they say about Ukraine. It's because of a bunch of reasons.
What the fuck? The fuck? Bruh? Okay. So the reason why these organizations that you just went mask off and called bullshit, verbatim, you said Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch are bullshit. We can roll back the fucking tape. The reason why you just went mask off. Yes, okay. So own the position that you just said. Is because they accuse the Ukrainian military, and there's a 2015 Human Rights Report.
It's not because of that.
Hold on. Please,
actually,
let him finish.
I haven't even made the accusation. You're just saying,
yeah, I know, but he's gonna mind read me now.
You can correct once he makes his statement.
All right, fine.
Him, I promise you. And we do gotta at least have some order in this. I'm getting a headache. I have a huge headache now. Go ahead, Lactoid, please.
Okay. So the reason why, I'm going to try this a third time, the reason why you call them bullshit, and there also, by the way, is a 2015 UN Human Rights Report that accuses the Ukrainian military of a bunch of this shit too, is because you don't like the fact that these organizations and these reports are stating that the Ukrainian military absolutely did fire cluster missiles. Now, when I say indiscriminate, I'm not necessarily saying willy-nilly in terms of they're just for the lulz. They were like, oh, I got this missile. Let's just see what it does over there. I'm not saying that. I'm sure in their minds they had some kind of military objective in mind. I'm sure they were thinking, well, if we, that's the enemy over there. There's probably soldiers walking around over there. There are soldiers that maybe we saw a couple days ago that were nearby. There's shit going on. Are there a shit ton of civilians in this area? Are there a bunch of civilians everywhere? Is this a heavily, densely populated urban area? Yeah, it is. But we're going to fire the cluster missile, which, by the way, as a weapon, a cluster missile is not precise, right? It is a area of effect, widespread missile that they were firing into heavily populated urban areas. This was leading to over 80% of all the civilian casualties in that conflict being within the separatist areas. The thousands of civilians that are getting blown up were in the DPR and the LPR, were in these separatist areas. They were the ones taking the cluster missiles. Overwhelmingly, this is the case. And this is why these reports allege this.
We got to give it back to Kalinda. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Respond.
I was not saying that Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International are bullshit because of what they said about Ukraine. In general, I am skeptical of these fucking human rights orgs because that they often have weird shit that honestly a lot of it is because of the way that they talk about, at the risk of going into other stuff here, weird shit with Israel and Palestine, in particular Amnesty International, where it's very obvious that they engage in this weird motivated reasoning shit, or they have some sort of bias or whatever. I'm just not, I would prefer the UN. I think that they are, at least in this area, better than these other groups, because that they often just kind of jump to conclusions about what is and isn't a war crime. And I mean, again, if you are targeting soldiers in an area, then by definition, that is discriminate. It's not indiscriminate. You can't just say that just because there's civilians around that this means that it was indiscriminate. That's not what indiscriminate means.
So hold on. I can just say, oh, there's at least one soldier in Manhattan, so I'm just going to fire a cluster missile in Manhattan. That would be
you have to do a proportionality assessment.
Yeah, and so my argument is that this is dramatically disproportionate, and that's the opinion of these agencies too, because this is why there's thousands of civilian deaths. Yes, this is why there's thousands of civilian deaths.
Yes, because that these agencies think that that's because they also don't. Did these agencies know what the Ukrainians were working with before they did these strikes? Do they know what kind of intel they had? Do they have all the information about the number of soldiers that were there? Do they know any of this shit? Or did they just go into an area and see that a whole bunch of civilians got hurt, and that was where they formed their conclusion?
Yeah, I don't know exactly the full process and what their investigators found and the exact timeline of everything that those agencies did. What I'm pointing out is that these international organizations that were there and that sent investigators there and looked into this shit, they found abuses by the Ukrainian military. The UN in a 2015 human rights report also found this shit. The United States in our human rights report finds that the Ukrainian government commits human rights abuses and torture and indiscriminate attacks and all these things.
That's not the
I'm
same claim as what you also
yes, I'm adding this in because I'm pointing out all these different reports that are constantly pointing to all these.
It matters.
United States one. I understand. The U.S. one I'm talking about is in 2024. I understand that is a little bit different than the 2014 and 2015 ones that I referenced before from the UN, Amnesty, and the Human Rights Watch. I understand, but I'm putting this into a broader point, and the broader point here is being that the Ukrainian government at this stage, who started this conflict to begin with by illegally taking power, okay, has been committing war crimes and human rights abuses, and currently is doing a whole bunch of other shit that I don't even know if we have the time to get into all the crazy shit that they're doing. We've talked about the language bans. We've talked about the indiscriminate shelling. We talked about the religion ban. We can also talk about the heavy restrictions on the media that the EU has already condemned. We can talk about, I think it was Section 420 that Zelensky signed, which allows anybody
to talk about media restrictions. Please look at Russia.
And we can talk about the law that Zelensky signed, who is currently illegally in power, by the way. The law that Zelensky signed that allows the government of Ukraine to arrest people if they, quote, spread any kind of, quote unquote, misinformation about the war, if they in any way support the war. And this is how somebody, and I'm going to bring him up again because nobody ever seems to fucking care. This is how this is the law that Coach Red Pill was arrested under and was tortured and killed. But again, nobody seems to care, right? Because, hey, that's Ukraine doing it. Nobody seems to care, despite the fact this was a streamer who was in the same space that we occupy.
Okay. Kalinda, you can respond.
Have you watched any of Coach Red Pill's videos? Have you seen any of the shit that he was saying? That he thought he could just keep saying in Ukraine? He was literally... He was a Russian propaganda shill who repeated literally every fucking Russian talking point. He denied Russian war crimes.
You think I'm a Russian shill?
I'm sorry. No, he was way worse than you, dude. At least you're not out there making dumb claims about how Ukraine was committing genocide in the Donbass and how Bucha wasn't real and talking about fucking Victorian New.
So I don't have to get tortured and killed.
No, I don't think that you should get tortured and killed. And by the way, I don't think that he should have been tortured and killed either. However, it is pretty funny that... Hold on, listen to me. I think... I just don't care. You know what?
I know you don't.
But I have no sympathy for somebody who's going to go to it, who's going to stay in another country that's being invaded and then shit talk that country and talk about how Russia is working hard to minimize civilian casualties. And then he has a chance to leave after the FSB supposedly talked to him and he chooses not to. And then he tries to, and he's an idiot because he fucking literally videos himself going to the border. He could have just left the fucking country, dude. I'm sorry. But yeah, I don't really have much sympathy for somebody who's going to do that. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah, your timeline's fucked up. He tried to escape the country, but he was stopped at the border and brought back. He was tortured, and he tried to leave. He was tortured and he was killed. And I understand, you just don't care. I think it's really fucked up that he was tortured and killed. I think that he said things that I wouldn't. I'm not going to go to Ukraine and be like, the soldiers are dumb, and kind of go against the government talking points. And I mean, some of the stuff he was saying is true. I mean, we can talk about how the military to civilian casualty ratio in the current war is way better than almost every war that the United or almost any other country has been involved with in modern history. We can talk about that in a second. But he probably was doing it in the wrong place. I certainly wouldn't do it. He should have seen I'm kind of living under an authoritarian country now. I shouldn't be saying this shit. He should have tried to leave earlier. But it's still a travesty that him and other people, because again, the 2024 Human Rights Report from us is saying the government is doing this. I don't think he should have been tortured. I don't think he should have been tortured to death. I don't think he should have been tortured to death. And these are the people that we are funding. We are sending money to the people who are torturing people to death. And we're I don't care. He shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have done it. I don't care. I mean, how can you claim to care about freedom of speech? You claim to profess liberal values. Freedom of speech.
Okay,
but you don't care that he was tortured and killed.
You gotta let Kalinda respond.
Jesus.
Liberal.
And just to be real quick, I haven't seen any conclusive evidence that he was killed. or tortured for that.
He,
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure he died of pneumonia. And no, there's no evidence that he was tortured other than his word. But you
Otto
know what? I
Warmbier
believe it
also
because
died of
yeah,
pneumonia.
Put out a
Ukrainian.
thing saying he was being tortured, but I've seen no corroborating.
Yeah, but
evidence.
that's just
And then he
of course
died in
he would like.
captivity.
Yeah, he died of pneumonia. He wasn't
So
killed by the.
did Otto Warmbier.
Ukrainians.
He also died in North Korea of just pneumonia. I guess. Hey,
What?
we can just trust the North
Yeah,
Koreans, right?
because Ukraine and North Korea are exactly the same thing. They have the
They're getting
same
kinda-
level of repression.
They're getting close.
No, they're not. Not even.
But
I agree, they're not the
I'm
same.
sorry, Kalinda.
They're-
You can respond
They
to
are
his
nowhere
points
near
and
the
respond to his
same.
claims, or make claims of your own. Go ahead, please. The
Okay.
floor is yours.
Fuck. Sorry, I just lost what I was had something in my head and now I can't remember what the fuck I was going oh yeah, I didn't get the timeline wrong. He disappeared for a bit and then when he came back he said the FSB had talked to him and he still chose not to leave the country, and then later on he was arrested and then they let him out and then he tried to run away and he violated like his bail, I think, or like it and then he
by
tried
trying to
to
flee.
cross the border into Hungary. Yeah, but like why the fuck didn't he flee the first time?
Yes, he should have
Also-
avoided the rape. He should have avoided, because rape is also alleged in some of those human rights reports. Just keep in mind. But he
Yeah,
should have.
I'm aware Ukrainian prisons suck.
Yep. He should have escaped.
Eastern European
he should
prisons
have-
in general
yes,
suck, dude.
He should have escaped the torturing people. He should have escaped them earlier. I don't disagree.
Can I ask you?
If I was counseling him, I would tell him to leave earlier.
Go
Unfortunately,
ahead, Kalinda.
Can I ask you a question?
Died.
Do you think that Winston Churchill during World War II was a dictator and that the UK was an authoritarian regime in World War II? Because they also repressed or they also suppressed freedom of speech too. You also could not say certain things. Newspapers were not allowed to print certain things, and people who had Nazi sympathies were imprisoned. These were things that happened. Were they also authoritarian? They were fighting an existential war.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the same level of repression. I don't think they were torturing people to the same extent. I don't know
they weren't
those
torturing
reports.
people. If that's your only problem,
that's
then
not
you
my
know
only
what?
point.
I
That's
accept that.
not my only point. It's not my only point. They weren't banning churches. They weren't banning German. They weren't torturing people. There's a lot of things they weren't doing, despite the fact they were in an existential fight for their country. I think in World War II, there's much more evidence, right? That actually was the case. When it comes to whether, I would agree they're more authoritarian, because they haven't done those other things. Though, do I feel confident that they've moved over into being a little bit more of a dictatorship? I don't know. That's a good question. My understanding is that Churchill did suspend some things that were kind of important.
Yeah,
and
he did.
And maybe you could levy reasonable criticism towards Churchill and say, he shouldn't have done it this way. That's really bad. But the actual consequences here and the other things that he was doing don't rise nearly as bad as what Ukraine is doing. He wasn't banning German. He wasn't torturing people. He wasn't doing any of this shit. And the UK is a little bit different because they don't have a firm constitution in the way that Ukraine does or that we do. And the Ukrainian constitution, which is quite literally the highest law of the land, very specifically states what the requirements are to remove a president, and also very specifically states what the requirement is on how long you need to be a president. Zelensky was elected in 2019. It's currently 2026. He should have had an election in 2024. But he's not having an election. So he's
Ukrainians don't want to have an election. Ukrainians don't want to have an election.
The Constitution mandates an election.
And they passed a law. It's like suspending they will have an election after the war. I understand you're going to say, oh man, that's against the Constitution or whatever. But you know what? The Ukrainian Constitution is not really perfect. And there's a bunch of changes that they probably should fucking make to it. I'm sorry that it's not as great as America's awesome Constitution that's lasted for 250 years. The Ukrainian Constitution is very new.
You're right. It's newer. Yeah, their Constitution is newer. It's very long. It's actually in many ways a lot more detailed than our Constitution. But it also is very specific as to term limits and situations in which a president gets to leave or doesn't get to leave. And
I don't think that they.
I don't want to hang my hat on the fact that this is technically illegal, in the most technical sense, because I think you've already admitted that technically they broke the law. But it's my argument is that it's egregiously illegal and very intentionally illegal. It's not the case that oops, we broke the law for something that we needed to do. It is on the same day that they knew the president was still in the country, they decided to have an illegal vote anyway. The next person in line was from the Party of Regions. He steps down due to suspicious circumstances, health reasons that he has never clarified and has never occurred before. All of a sudden, he can't be in power due to unspecified health reasons. The opposition party takes over, and they immediately replace part of the Supreme Court, and they immediately issue arrest warrants for members of their opposition. Like, this is not, oh shit, we were kind of put in a position where we have to do this. This is obviously intentional. This is an obviously intentional power grab. And the people that didn't want to live under that new power structure,
go ahead.
They get cluster missiles.
Yeah,
that's what they get.
I get it. Okay, well, first of all, no, you're like wrong about the people that didn't want to live with the new power structure or whatever. Also, you know what else you're wrong about? You're repeating this weird two Ukraines myth shit. Okay, people in the East, the majority of Ukrainians saw themselves as Ukrainians. Like, what do you think that people in Donbass saw themselves as? Do you think that they saw themselves as Russian? That we have polling on how people identify.
We do have polling on how, like, so the Donbass is a little bit of a different. I think especially the areas that became separatist, those areas were dramatically disproportionately Russian speaking, and they identified more with Russia.
Doesn't.
When you get outside of that area, I would agree with you that on ethnic lines, there's a lot of people who would still say, yeah, I'm Ukrainian, even though they spoke Russian. They tended to affiliate more with Russian culture and product and everything. They did self-identify as Ukrainian. That all being said, though, that's entirely irrelevant. The people there voted for the guy, and in polls, they wanted to be autonomous from Kiev. They didn't want to live under the thumb of Kiev. They wanted to have autonomy. And yeah,
that's not the same as Russia coming in and taking over, though, is it? And by the way, if they wanted to hold on, let me finish. If they wanted to
cut me off, just to be clear.
That would be fine. But that's not what happened. And by the way, it wasn't them who started the violence. It was fucking Igor Girkin and his band of Russian people who came in and took over Sloviansk. And they started taking over buildings, which the majority of people in Donbass didn't support. If you look at the polling, people didn't support the violence. What? Are you denying that happened?
I have the voice. I understand that once again, there were Russian specialists and agents that went into Donbass to help them in their fight. This absolutely is the case. It absolutely is the case. The vast majority of them, according to our sources, of the military that existed within the DPR and the LPR, those Donbass areas were made up of locals. Were made up of the people there that were armed, and they wanted to fight. In the same way, by the way, that for our revolution in America, we were armed by the Spanish. And the French sent us generals. The French sent military officers to help us with our separation from the UK, and it was fine. It is perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine for other countries to help countries gain their self-determination if it is denied. That's not what they
were doing.
America does this all the fucking time.
That's not what Russia was doing.
We've been funding and helping the Kurds in Iran. We've been funding and helping the Kurds in Iraq. We even fucking funded al-Nusra in Syria, which is like has some kind of scary affiliations with Al-Qaeda.
I don't know why
we intervene in Kosovo because your standard is
that was actually based
because your standard. I know you think it is. Your standard is so brazenly a cover. Your standard is so brazenly a cover for what actually is happening. And what actually is happening is this kind of ultra nationalistic. It's got to be good. Like it's good for America. Which I disagree with. We can argue about that.
And so
it's good. No, it's not mind reading. I'm saying what you're doing. I'm saying like this is the act. This is actually what you're doing.
Sure.
And you want to attribute motivations to almost everything I say. But the moment that I attribute motivations to what you say, all of a sudden it's mind reading. You can't do that.
Okay.
This whole time I've been right about every when we dive into the facts and I post you articles. What article?
You're dismissing.
What article has been posted that I'm wrong about?
Give it to Kalinda. Let her answer. Go ahead, please.
Have you checked your DMs? The Constitution of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. I linked it to you. Crimea had a constitution from 1998 until April 2014.
Hold on.
They got another constitution.
The actual constitution.
Crimea got a constitution.
Let me see what you're referring to.
Just click the link.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me read into what you're talking about here because you were wrong on that first.
They made a new constitution after the 1994 thing.
Mm-hmm. Hold on a second.
It was voted by the.
Oh no! Oh my God!
Hold on. Can I ask you another question?
Oh, no.
before you go off
You don't
about
get to
how
ask me
I'm
another
wrong?
question. You don't get to ask me another question. I just looked at what you sent. We're going to talk about what you sent. So
What are you going to
when
say?
the
This is
Soviet,
bad because Kiev picked their constitution? They still have a constitution, and they still maintain a level of autonomy.
you mean Kiev wrote, like, Kiev was the one that passed the constitution, not the Crimeans? You think that matters? Yes, that matters. Because here's the point. And this is what, once again, you send me some bullshit. So in
No,
1992,
you said
when
they
the-
didn't have a
once
constitution.
again, you
go
send me
ahead.
some bullshit. What I said was that their constitution that they had in place that actually had them as like a distinct, because under the Soviet Union times, it was considered it was an ASSR, right? It was a different republic that was like marginally part of Ukraine, but it didn't really matter because it was the Soviet Union. There was freedom of movement between all the different republics anyway. And so in 1992,
Not really, but whatever.
when there was a separation, Crimea attempted to have a independence referendum. Ukraine said no. They threatened force. You're not allowed to have independence. Crimea backed down. 1995 happens. They again attempt to separate themselves from Ukraine. The Ukrainians send in the military, and they abolish the constitution of Crimea that had been pre-existing. They abolish that constitution. And you're right. Then the Ukrainian government in Kiev imposes a new constitution on Crimea. That is not their constitution. That is Kiev's constitution on Crimea. This is not meaningful.
What was Meshkov doing when Ukraine decided to send in the troops?
What
was the other reason they decided to do that? What was Meshkov doing?
Yes, he absolutely was planning on getting Crimea out of Ukraine. He was absolutely in communication.
No, what was he doing?
With
You're
Russian
wrong.
people.
There's something else to it. Do you know what he was doing? He literally he said he was mad at the parliament because they weren't getting all the shit done that he wanted. So he dissolved them, and then he declared himself the sole ruler of Crimea. He tried to make himself into a fucking dictator.
No.
So, yeah, he did.
I know what you're talking about.
Not true?
No, he did not turn
the
sole leader of all of the sole part of Crimea. We're talking about the elected head of a republic here, who, according to the constitution that was pre-existing, yes, he did have the right to dissolve parliament.
Crimean law, dude.
No, he has under the Crimean law. He had the right. He had the right to dissolve the. Hold on, did he have the right to dissolve the parliament?
The parliament didn't think so. They kept working. They didn't leave.
Stop. Under the constitution of Crimea, did he have the right to dissolve the parliament?
I don't think so. No, because clearly the parliament didn't. The parliament decided. The parliament did not.
No, he did. Well, I guess we'll have to hash that part out because my understanding
about 5
is
minutes before I'm getting.
I understand.
Yeah.
My understanding is that he did. My understanding is that he did, but so he did. In my understanding, the Ukrainian military came down and abolished the constitution that was pre-existing. Even if you wanted to make some argument, which I disagree with, but even if you wanted to make the argument that they could have come down and just taken him and then had the legislator or have the people there elect a new leader, they could have done that.
They intervened.
They could have. Yeah, they could have. Well, so first of all, they could have done that. But second of all, strange now all of a sudden that you're okay with countries intervening in other autonomous republics. They sending in their troops, despite the fact this was considered
part of Ukraine, dude. They're not a separate country.
It was ostensibly part, in the most technical sense. It had a separate constitution. It was
an autonomous republic.
It's separate in the same way that Taiwan is part of China. Taiwan is legally part of China.
No, absolutely not.
But we know they're not. We know Taiwan is not. Now maybe you think they
Taiwan's
should be.
A country.
Because hold on. Whoa. International law doesn't recognize them as a country. Why do you think they're a country? I think they're a country because of the self-determination of the people living there. Why do you think Taiwan should be a country?
Everybody treats them like they're a fucking country, dude.
So that's the standard? If everybody treats you as a country, now you are one?
The only reason why Taiwan's not recognized as a country is because people don't want to make China mad.
Okay, but they don't recognize them then. So you're telling me that if everybody
basically do. They de facto recognize them. They just don't recognize them.
So you're just So you're stop. Your justification now. Your moral.
So are you going to tell me that who recognized Crimea?
Hold on. You're both talking
Let me respond to this. Well, no,
you're both talking over each other. Frankly,
oh my God,
the whole time.
Read the room. Okay, so your argument is that your moral position here is that what gives a country legitimacy is whether or not other countries de facto recognize that country as a separate country. That is your line for self-determination?
Go ahead, Kalinda. Is that your line?
No, that's not.
What is your line then?
My line for self-determination, that's like yeah, it is actually basically. It's whether or not like, like if they get recognized as the rest of the world and then they essentially become a country, then they're a country. I'm not aware of anybody who like in the 90s was treating Crimea like they were a separate country. Also,
Okay,
by the
so
way,
you're-
the majority of Crimeans voted to leave Russia along with Ukraine, the rest of Ukraine, in the 1991 referendum. I know
in
it
the
was less of them. It was like
1991 referendum.
54%.
No,
Yeah, in the 1991
no.
Ukrainian independence referendum, the majority
Yep.
of Crimeans also voted to leave. It was like a lesser slim minority or majority,
They
not as much
voted-
as like the Donbass, but they did vote to leave.
They voted specifically for both countries leaving the USSR. That was the understanding of Crimeans, and this is why within a year they attempted to have a referendum on independence, which the Ukrainians denied. Firstly, secondly, I think that this
Yeah,
standard.
because it was seen
I think
as
that this
part of
standard.
Crimea
I
or
think that this.
Ukraine.
Well, here, great. That's going to go right into the second part that I think is crazy. Your standard
What do you
of
think? What is
the
your
people.
standard?
Jesus fucking Christ. This standard you have of if enough countries, and enough here has not been specified, if enough countries de facto treat a country as if it is a separate country, now the people living within this country have the right of self-determination. This is not a moral position at all. This is an entirely like might makes right position. This is an entirely position of, well, I mean, the big powerful countries, they recognize, they basically, they don't recognize, but they treat Taiwan
That's
as though
not
it's
a
separate.
moral position,
so-
dude. That's
and so-
my pragmatic
Yeah,
position.
I think
'Cause that's the way the
self-determination of
world
people and
works.
democracy and these like things are actually moral positions. I don't like the idea of
I
like
do too, but
oppressing
I
different
just
groups of people.
don't agree with your standard with regards to like Donbass or whatever, because that all the polling data does not suggest that they all just wanted to like leave and join Russia, and most of them saw themselves as Ukrainian, and most of them were not in support
try to
of the
clarify.
violent actions to take buildings.
Okay.
So
We are looping. Just real quick. I'll let you
No,
respond,
this is not a loop.
Lactoid.
This is not a loop.
I'll let you respond, but let me clarify what's going to happen here. So,
Sure.
in about 5 minutes, okay, we're going to get to closing statements. We're going to let each of these lovely people have a chance to have their closing thoughts on.
I actually had 2 more questions that I wanted to ask that were completely unrelated to all of this, but we just didn't get to it.
Fair, well, ask them in your closings, and we'll.
Yeah, but then he won't get to answer,
We
and
can
then like,
have-
or if he
well,
does, then
let-
we'll
let
just
me-
keep going.
Let me finish.
Yeah, Wick.
Okay. Then we're gonna get the super chats, and then if both parties want, they can stay, and we can have like an open call-in thing. That's up to you guys, though. But that's what's gonna happen because we need to put a wrap on the official debate, right? So, Lactoid, finish your statement, please, quickly.
Okay. So in regards to the Donbass, there was Zeus. It's a pollster out of Germany. It's a Western-oriented pollster.
Yeah, I know.
That polled. Okay, I know because you took all my links from my Discord. The Zeus pollster very
That wasn't
specifically.
the only thing I did.
I'm a believe it. Well, you also read the Wikipedia and watched part of my debates too.
No, that's not
the
true.
Zeus
I also read all
pollster-
those
Both of
UN
you, both of you, stop.
The-
Lactoid,
the-
finish.
You just read the
Lactoid,
Wikipedia.
finish, and then you can respond. I promise.
The
Also,
Zeus
you read
pollster
the Wikipedia too, dude. And you looked at
The Z-
articles from it, which I
Okay,
did too. but
Lactoid
go
has to
ahead,
finish his
sorry.
statement. Go ahead, Lactoid, please.
The Zeus pollster found that the vast majority, upward about 75%, of the people living within the DPR and the LPR, which are the separatist areas of the Donbass, either wanted to just straight up join Russia, or, and this is literally what was attempted in Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 in around 2015, which was have autonomy from Ukraine, which is that kind of somewhat similar to how Crimea used to be, which is that they are, they're not part of Russia, but they decide their own elections. They vote for their own candidates and they verify their own elections. You don't have Kiev doing it. They have like a separate constitution, a separate education policy, separate everything, right? They get to have autonomy. And this was a large segment of the group as well. And so despite the fact that was roughly split, that's what they were trying to go for. And this was attempted in 2014 and 2015, and then 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. The whole time this was attempted. There was a poll from the Levada Center in 2024. I don't know if you've seen it. And Levada Center is not a friendly with the Russian government right now. They're actually considered a foreign organization by the Russian government because of some other reasons. The Russian government's not perfect, of course. They're pretty bad in a lot of respects. But the Levada Center found that in their polling, in contradiction to what Ukraine was saying, is that most people in that area did want to separate from Ukraine and join Russia. Perhaps maybe all those years of warfare changed their opinion. Who exactly knows? But the reality is that the Ukrainians were not accepting Minsk II at the time. They were continuing their war to a lesser extent, but they were continuing their war with the Donbass. And if they were to join NATO, then there's nothing that Russia could do with the Donbass in order to save them from Ukrainian aggression in the Donbass.
Kalinda, respond, and then we're going to closings. So go ahead and respond.
Hold on. Okay. Are you talking about this, attitudes and identities across the Donbass front line? What has changed 2016 to 2019?
No,
this one? Because, yeah, I looked at this. I feel like you were making it out to be way more cut and dry than it was, but...
A second. Yeah, this one. So page, page 12.
I don't know what you guys are looking at up there.
Yeah, it's figure 7, because that's the one that you...
That's what I'm referring to.
Did you not
figure
look
7.
at any of... I'm just curious. What about all these other ones? Or do you just not think that they matter?
Yeah, they're not relevant to my point. The other ones aren't relevant to the DPR or the LPR. The figure 7 is specifically about the separatist areas that we're talking about. Those are the areas that I'm talking about. And those areas wanted to either leave just straight up, or they wanted...
Yeah, the separatist areas that were being oppressed, where everybody could only had like Russian media to consume.
They're being oppressed.
I mean, of course. Yeah. Wait. Do you you don't think that? Yeah, you're doing it again. You actually think that like life is...
I actually think the German pollster...
Let Kalinda finish. Let Kalinda finish, please.
You actually think life is worse in like Ukraine, in like the Donbass, in government-controlled areas, in terms of like freedoms that people have, than in the fucking like LPR and DPR? Which, by the way, like...
I think anywhere along the front line is bad. I think we're talking a little bit different time. We're talking about a little bit of a different time back here in between 2014 and 2016. But what this graph shows is my point, which is this comes from Germany. I mean, this is not a Russian government. If you haven't noticed, and maybe and I know you've seen all my sources, they're not from the Russian government. These are not Russian government sources. These are Western sources, U.S. sources, reputable pollsters, and this German pollster from a country part of NATO, this Western-oriented pollster, finds that about 3/4 of the people in these areas don't want to live under Kiev's rule. They either want to join Russia directly, or they want to have autonomy and be separated. And that was attempted for God knows how many, we know exactly how many years, between 2014 and 2022. And the Ukrainian side refused to acknowledge the elections that were happening in those areas. I mean, why are we... And here's the thing, at the end of the day, you keep saying, yeah, but Russia's bad too. And I'm going to keep saying, yes, there are also...
Russia's worse.
There's terrible things
in every way.
There's terrible things you can point to in Russia. Their president
Russia
actually
is worse in every way.
In every way, yet their president actually did have an election, unlike Zelensky, who didn't have an election.
Really? You think Putin won like,
really,
what was it, 95% of the vote, that was legitimate?
You don't have Russia, the Russian government here saying, yeah, we're going to ban the Ukrainian language. That's not a thing. Yes, they do have a very draconian... They have a very draconian media disinformation restriction law, which is crazy.
They have no free speech. They have no freedom of the press.
I agree. There's plenty of terrible things you can point to in Russia.
I'm just saying Ukraine has more freedom than Russia does.
I agree. But once
Ukraine
again,
also has a real civil society, and they want to be a real country instead of getting fucked by Russia.
In my intro, I specifically stated, I think, what are very reasonable elements necessary in order to give billions of our money, of the tax money that's been taken from us, the worker, that's been taken from us and giving it to a country. Okay, giving it to a country. Yes, they're taking my shit. I'm a fucking prole, dude. I'm out here fucking working, and they're taking my shit, and they're giving it,
Lactoid the
and they're
commie.
giving it, and they're giving it,
They're
to a
not
country.
giving it, by the
They're
way.
giving
Now
it.
they're
They are
selling it.
giving
It's
it.
for sale.
Most of the $200 billion has been in the form of grants. It's been in the form of
Yeah,
grants.
I'm aware of
where
that,
we
but
have
Trump
given
changed it.
most of the $200 billion in free shit and money, and that's not even including what the EU has given them, which is another $200 billion. We've given them all
That's
this
the
fucking
EU's
money.
choice.
Right, I suppose. So I just have a really big problem with the fact that we gave them $200 billion of my fucking money, and they gave them $200 billion. And who are we funding? We're funding a regime that illegally took power and is currently illegally maintaining power, and is refusing to grant different parts of the country freedom of self-determination, and I'm funding that. And that's bullshit. We shouldn't be doing it. We just shouldn't be funding them.
Okay, let's go.
You're not wait, hold on. You're not funding that. What the fuck? Bro, it's been different governments. You think it's been the same government since 2014? It hasn't.
So it's the same power structure. It's not. It's different presidents, but it's the same underlying power structure. Yes.
Okay.
The power structure wasn't the same before 2014.
Yeah, they changed the Constitution back, so the president didn't have as much power.
They changed the Constitution, and they replaced part of the Constitutional Court, and they put their own people in power.
Yanukovych agreed to change the Constitution. He signed that agreement. And then he was like, oh, wait, no, never mind. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, was that scheduled to happen in 20? You're talking about the allegation of, you're talking about where he signed something, but then there's actually no evidence that he actually specifically signed it.
What do you mean there's no evidence? We have him on, there's like a picture of him signing it. Isn't there like video of him signing the February 21st agreement, the agreement that they all came up with, the one that said that you even talked about it, the one that said that there would be elections in December and that they would change the Constitution. Yeah,
no,
he
signed.
did.
Yeah, he signed that one. There was going to be a couple changes.
He signed the agreement to roll the Constitution back. So why do you have a problem with that?
Yeah, maybe I was a little bit confused. So there's one allegation that Yanukovych signed an agreement in which he agreed to resign and also agreed to immediately change the Constitution. That's all bullshit. He did sign an agreement that would call for early elections, and there was going to be also elections on some changes later on in the year. That was the case. That did happen. I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
The 2004 Constitution, and then he went back on all of that. He did
not go back on the election that was going to happen later.
No, but he went back on the 2020 or on the Constitution thing, because I think the Rada passed it, and then he didn't sign it, and he was like that. Which, by the way, it would have taken his powers away for the president. The 2004 Constitution reduced the powers of the president.
Sort of. It reduced it in part, and it granted more in part.
It changed didn't it change Ukraine from the type of parliament that it was? It would change it to
sort of. It's very complicated exactly what effect the constitutional change.
Yeah, I know you're a lawyer and I'm not.
It's not correct, but there is more nuance here. But the important thing is that prior constitution had nothing to do with the events in February, right? Because he agreed to have these votes and to have a snap election.
The protesters
later on in the year.
The
armed insurrectionists were able to strong arm their way. Yes, I agree. This is what happened.
Okay, gang.
I mean, by the way, I don't agree with your weird assertion about how November 30th was that was the first big escalation. I'm sorry, but
I
these
sent you an article
with the police. Yeah, I know you did, but that's not the same as what I'm talking about. Okay,
you said the first punch.
Little clashes with police. Yeah, okay, fine, and yeah, I do still walk that back. But the first major escalation,
don't go back to it.
The first insane thing that happened was the night of November 30th when they
were occupying government buildings. They were occupying and and trashing, breaking glass, rioting shit. They were doing this at least 5 days earlier, probably a little bit earlier. I don't know exactly the date. I don't know exactly who threw the first punch, but this was for sure happening on the 25th of November, 2013.
Okay.
100%.
With that said, ladies, gentlemen, I'm going to give closing statements to each of these lovely individuals, and I hope during their closing statements, they can tell you where you can find them. I have links to their stuff in my YouTube description. Please do so. And then we're going to get to Super Chats, and then we'll see where we go. Kalinda, go ahead. Close this out.
How about I let Lactoid go first? Because I went first the last time.
Fair enough.
Unless you like to repeat the same thingy. Usually it's the first person who goes is the last or something.
Yeah, Wick.
I guess
do your job right.
I guess you just kind of like to be random.
Whatever I think is best, okay? But if you don't want to go first, then Lactoid can go first. Go ahead. It doesn't matter to me.
So I don't really have a closing written down because my closing is just going to be based on the conversation. So first of all, I'm Lactoid. You can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I think that one of the things that I Kalinda, with all due respect, you challenged me on this debate months ago. And you repeated multiple times, months and months ago.
Yeah, clearly I didn't do enough research.
It's my closing. It's my closing. You can't interrupt me during my closing. About 2 or 3 months ago, I think you said 3. Maybe it has been that long. You challenged me, but you also said, yeah, it frustrates you that Lactoid says so many false things and Russian propaganda, the Russian shill, Russian talking points. I don't think you said multiple times. I don't think he really believes this. I don't think he really knows anything about this. I just think that he just like read the Wikipedia and then just came up with an opinion. And you had all this arrogance, and then you challenged me to a debate. But then you had to take several months to prepare yourself because you came to the conclusion first. You've engaged in what I think you engaged in what I think is the most transparent display of motivated reasoning that I've ever witnessed from a debater, where you start with the strongest claim and then you research to try and find the "I'm right" section of Wikipedia, and then you started this whole debate by trying to emulate different talking mechanisms of your favorite streamers by challenging me and saying, "No, you're wrong, you're lying. Let's get down to this." And immediately stood by and stated false information, where you were very confident and very arrogant about the fact it was November 30th, but in reality, I had the proof that it was not. And I think that basically highlights the entire debate, where time and time again, every time you thought you knew something, you wanted to reference something that you thought maybe I didn't know about. I know all this stuff. You're not the first person I've had a conversation with. So that's my main criticism of you. I will give you a little bit of props though here. You're the only person I've ever debated on Ukraine, I think ever, I could be wrong on this, even off platform, who actually has demonstrated this level of commitment to try and research the subject. Everybody else who I've debated with, no offense, Wick, I even think you would agree. I don't think you've done like 3 months of everyday research into Ukraine before our debate.
Well, not directly, but I had been doing debates on Ukraine, hosting debates on Ukraine, and while it was not specifically for our debates specifically,
sure,
over months,
I'm sure you've but we're talking about almost every day. Almost every day, Kalinda's been doing this, and so I do respect that to some extent. I respect that you put the effort in to try and argue the nitty gritty of the specific circumstances that happened. But at the end of the day, what I think really ultimately this is going to boil down to is going to be the same conclusion that boils down to almost every debate, Ukraine debate that I have, which is that everything I'm saying in terms of the factual claims I'm making, the empirical claims I'm making, they are actually all true. There is just a range of disagreement in terms of, well, what do these true things justify? You seem to think that, well, these true things don't justify X, Y, Z. I think that they do. I think I've made a strong case as to why I think they do. And going back to the intro that I said, I don't want to be sending our money to what I don't see as a justified party, what I don't see as a morally righteous party, a party that is doing a whole bunch of terrible shit and started off doing a whole bunch of terrible shit. That and we didn't even get into. I'll wrap it up after this, Wick. I know it's a longer closing.
Yes, this is...
and we didn't even get into what I think the overall effect of this is really just going to be, which is turning Russia into a gas depot for China, who I think is the actual threat to world order and U.S. hegemony. Before all the sanctions, before everything that happened, Russia was integrated with Europe to a certain extent, and systematically that has been reduced and reduced and reduced, pushing Russia into signing deals with China that is favorable to China, funding their war machine, funding their economy, and I don't think that's good for America. I think that we are paying for a geopolitical alignment that is opposed to us, and I don't want to pay for that, especially when we're not even funding the good guys.
Okay.
So if you like what I had to say, you can find me at Lactoid TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube.
Thank you for being here, Kalinda. Last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really think that they are the bad guys, and I don't think Lactoid has demonstrated that Ukraine is in any way worse than Russia. Ukraine is not some sort of perfect society. And by the way, that was something that I did discover when I was doing research, because no, I did not engage in motivated reasoning. I still feel like that's what you did. If we're going to mind read each other, then fuck it, we're going to mind read each other. Russia is demonstrably worse in every way. I don't know, like, I guess I have read a bunch of human rights reports. You can find articles from the Kyiv Independent to the Kyiv Post criticizing Zelensky in ways that you could never get away with regards to Putin. If Zelensky's a dictator, he's the biggest pussy dictator in the world, because that he like signed a law that revoked the independence of like the Nabu, and then a few thousand people went out into the street with fucking cardboard signs, and he was like, "Whoa, okay, guys, I take it back." Like, that's like a pussy dictator if I've ever seen one. He's not a very good dictator if he's a dictator. And I think Ukraine has a real civil society, and they would like to improve, and they would like to be a real country. And I'm sorry, but the fact that they're not perfect doesn't justify Russia basically getting to come in and roll over them, and the entire world standing by and just not giving a fuck because you're mad that you don't want your money going to a country that just doesn't happen to be a perfect democracy. If they want to join the EU, most of the criticisms that you have levied against them, including the language shit, is they will have to change. Otherwise, they won't get into the EU, because the EU has rules. And I think Ukraine's self-determination, yeah, I said self-determination, is more worth it than just because they're not perfect. They shouldn't get rolled over by Russia.
Where can people find
Anyway,
you?
that's it. Oh, yeah, Kalinda Live on YouTube.
Check her out, gang. I do appreciate you being here. Thank you to both. Okay, gang. I'm going to read some of these super chats. Some of them are addressed to you guys, but you can stay.
Can I say one thing before you do? It's
yeah.
one sentence. One sentence. It's one sentence. One sentence.
One sentence, but a short sentence.
I'm gonna have to get to respond if I have a response.
Sure. Well, yeah, that's fair, but I don't think you're gonna have
this
one.
is why I give it.
No, that's fair. I started out just as an argument against me being motivated in terms of my reasoning. I started out being pro-Ukraine at the beginning of this conflict. You can find streams of me arguing vigorously in favor of Ukraine. I had my mind changed.
Yeah, okay, I know, that's fine. Although, like, I don't know, like, I still just don't understand how anyone can look at these two situations and think Ukraine is like worse or the same as Russia. That is really mind-boggling to me. If you read like any of the UN reports, or like you watching this stuff, hell, we didn't even get to talk about the kidnapped children, dude. And like all the dumb shit that you've said about that. Do you still think that the Kherson human safari thing isn't happening? Or do you recognize that it
super chats for me to respond to this?
Respond briefly, and then super chat. This is why I didn't want anyone to say anything, and I just go super chats. But here we are. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the two things.
The Kherson human safari thing. We can talk about the kids later, because that'll be a longer thing. I'm just curious if you think the Kherson
I'll quickly respond to both. Yeah, I'll quickly respond to both. According to an EU report, the EU acknowledges that the so-called kidnapped children that you're referring to are indeed war orphans. And I'll say what I said before.
That's fucking based. If a kid's an orphan, that means I get to kidnap them and take them to my country.
Yes, if you are
and brainwash them to be my nationality.
If you are pushing a front line and you find orphaned children wandering about, it probably is a good thing to remove them from the front line. I do think that. I think there are genuine criticisms you can levy here regarding whether, in terms of Russia, whether or not they have sent a lot of them back, but not most.
No, not really. Not even close.
They sent a lot of them back, not most. I think they probably should and could do a better job at identifying any kind of living relatives that exist within Ukraine to send those children back to.
I feel like this is like,
primarily. Hold on, the debate's over.
No, wait. I just want to say something. Can I just say something?
You're letting him dodge the question you asked. You understand that by interrupting
me. I answered it pretty directly.
Hold on, stop. By interrupting me, trying to ask again so that he can actually answer, you're preventing me from holding him to task on this, because she asked you specifically about the human safari and whether you thought that was continually going on or not.
She asked both. I'm gonna get to the human safari.
I did. I wanted to talk about the kidnapped kids, but we can do that
because I have to answer a question at a time, bro. I can't speak two sentences at literally the exact same time, Wick. She asked me two different things. I answered the children thing, where
Don't
I do
answer
think
the
that
Hassan
there's
thing.
genuine criticisms when it comes to the human safari. I think the term human safari is like obvious sensationalizing what actually like what is actually going on and the actual current state of on the macro level of the war. Are there situations in which both sides are flying drones into vulnerable combatants, either disarmed combatants, prisoners of war, civilians? This is happening on both sides. There's videos of it on the internet. This, of course, is happening. But in terms of the macro conflict, this war has one of the lowest civilian to military casualty ratios of almost any modern conflict. It's about 13 soldiers per one
Okay,
civilian. This is
so the answer
dramatically.
the answer is
Better.
You
This is
you
dramatically
still think
better. This is dramatically better than our invasion of Iraq, than Israel's invasion of Gaza. This is dramatically better than even the trench warfare between Iraq and Iran. This is in fact, point to me a
yeah,
conflict that has
obviously.
a better that has in which there has been more
Israel,
focus on the
Palestine.
military compared to the civilians. There's been this war. If we look at it, it is absolutely a military on military war by any standard. And this
Yeah.
this drone safari is sensationalized language just to make it look like, well, this is actually a primarily civilian contacted war when it's just not. It's just not true.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, no, wait. I
Okay,
just want to
go
say,
ahead.
like, so
Talking
basically
super
the
chat.
answer is yes. You deny that Kherson, and by the way, you can go on Russian Telegram because it's their videos, they post them. You deny that there's like that in Kherson, Russia has basically declared like an open kill zone, and they fly like fucking drones in there, and they will, and like anybody that they see, they will like try to kill them with a drone, or they'll blow up random cars or whatever, even if there's people in them. You deny that this is happening, that they are going after civilians,
I
and
deny.
that they've said they are.
I want to say what I just said. I deny that at any kind of large scale or systemic level that the Russian military or the Ukrainian military, to give them credit, are like in at least since 2022 are specifically targeting civilians in any kind of like large scale capacity. They are focusing the vast majority of their resources into a military on military conflict. You are absolutely going to find specific instances of
There's not
drone
more than
warfare.
instances. It's
Stop!
systemic. There's a UN report.
You're absolutely going to find instances
Even your
of
precious Human Rights Watch talks about it too. They've got a huge
you are
report
absolutely
about
going to
it.
find instances of this happening. Of them, I do not think that they're targeting just anybody. I think that it's horrific when both the Russian military and the Ukrainian military do target non-combatants, whether it be civilians or POWs or any of these people, with drones. I think that's horrific, and that should stop tomorrow. 100%.
Should stop today.
Cool, thanks
Lactoid.
for both
It should
sizing.
Stop today.
Anyway,
that's not true, but whatever. I mean,
yeah,
I
want to get to my super chats. Both
Yeah,
of
you
you.
do.
No.
Yeah, all right, fine, whatever. I get it. You got to make money. Go ahead,
Dude.
Wick. Sorry.
It's fine. There'll be questions that you guys can answer, and you guys can yap more. I promise. Okay. $10 from Doobie. Says he was tortured multiple. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. Would Kalinda support detaining and torturing Lactoid for being a Russian shill? What about Hassan for being an Iranian shill? What about Wick for being a shill for Big Sweater?
Well, Hassan,
First of all,
yes, because fuck Hassan.
Damn,
I'm just
okay.
kidding, by the way. But also fuck Hassan. I was just going to say, Lactoid, you sound like Hassan when you criticize Russia. You sound the way Hassan sounds when he lightly criticizes Hezbollah and Hamas.
This Hassan guy sounds pretty based. I've never
Okay.
watched him, but
$10 from Doobie. Would Kalinda support a ban of Iranian cultural podcasts, language, media, religious practice in the U.S.? If no, why have a different
No!
standard? And again, this started years before the invasion. Go ahead.
Oh my god. No, I wouldn't, because these two things are not the same.
Okay.
Is Iran like trying to erase American culture? Also, it's very funny. Like Americans are like
probably
we are
banned there.
so fucking Americans are so fucking
Well,
privileged.
they
like
did-
I'm not
hold on.
American, but we
Iran
are.
did kill like 10,000 plus of its protesters. I don't know if it was about American
Yeah,
culture
they did.
specifically, but
I'm pretty sure Iran bans American culture, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
Iran does ban them. Yeah, I'm sure that
But
of course they do.
they'll just straight up
They're-
murder folk.
Yeah, they're an insanely repressive regime.
Yep, it's really bad. $10 from Doobie. I encourage all Azov-funded enemies of liberal values to donate to Wick's dog toy fund to talk shit about Lactoid. Well, you know what? Anyone can give me money, even Doobie. I appreciate any money, and we'll take money from almost any source. There's a few that I'd be like, "Fuck you, I'll give it back." But
Russia?
yeah, I would probably give it back.
Wow.
$5
Principled.
from Stormwolf. to say, Wick, play Doobie's video, I swear to God. Okay. Guess we're playing the video.
You got any pets, Lactoid?
Do you have any pets?
No.
Lactoid? I don't know.
I don't.
You don't have a cat or a dog?
Not
Damn.
anymore.
No, I like-
not
I
after
like-
the
I like-
incident, right?
I like cats and dogs. But
Oh,
no, I don't.
Okay, well.
Okay, let's see the video, gang.
Hold on, have you pre-vetted this video?
Yeah, you probably should. Doobie likes to watch
I don't know,
some
I
fucked up
trust it.
shit.
I trust Doobie. Oh wait, I know this one.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
It's actually a different one than I thought it was, but
Fair enough. AI gang. That's the future. $10 from Doobie. Ukraine tortured and killed my boy, Coach Red Pill, for speaking out against the tyrannical government. Libs have abandoned their supposed values to support Ukraine and Israel. This is why Hassan will win.
Oh my god.
$10 from Doobie.
Doobie is so...
And Doobie, you still haven't gotten back to me about when we're going to have that debate about whether that article was anti-Semitic or not. But we'll get to it.
Good luck, by the way. Debating Doobie about if things are anti-Semitic.
Well,
Good luck.
I'm pretty sure I got this one in the bag, but it is what it is. $10 from Doobie to say, imagine defending shelling civilian areas full of your own people with cluster bombs, Lamau. Thank you for the $10. $5 from Alishness. Make sure you thank Kalinda for every single one of her points. Thank you, Kalinda, for your points. Thank you for $5.
Thanks, Owlish.
Wait, was that Jebtan?
For giving...
Alish. Alish.
No, it was
Oh, it was
Owlish.
Owlish. Okay,
Thanks,
that's good.
Owlish, for giving Wick $5.
Yes, exactly. $10 from Hedonic Samuel. Hedonic Samuel? I'm not sure.
I know
you
that
ask
guy.
Lactose why he sounds like my uncle, who never tells me how he finds his news?
Kalinda has all my sources.
I looked at your source list and I was like, is this it? I could have swore that you had more based on all the shit that you were saying. You clearly didn't put everything in that Discord. Or that was some sort of thing
vast
that you
majority
just
of it.
What
did.
this is referring to.
By the
So-
way, I like the fact that in that channel there were people yelling at you and calling you a Russia shill. That was
Yeah.
another thing too. Like I actually did
I welcome
want
freedom
to,
of speech.
I know. I actually did want to have like a substantive discussion. Like I hope that like we at least did, rather than like just me saying, "Oh my God, you're repeating Russian propaganda." Even though I do think that like a lot of what you are saying is also Russian propaganda, but that doesn't mean that like you can't. I've been disappointed with people in the past who have basically just screamed at you and said you're a Russia shill and not actually tried to debate you or refute your points.
Yeah, I mean, you came in a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I did come in
personal.
a little hot. I'm sorry.
But-
I
Hold on.
forgot.
Hold on. Can
Yeah.
I
Hold
just
on, but I will agree.
Point of
Oh, God.
point of
Can I clarify?
you can clarify real quick, but just a point of
Oh God.
a point of
Moderator
privilege here. We had, and you both agreed to, a prompt that we never got to, and you guys both abandoned it immediately. And that
I wanted Lactoid to
I
agree
did
to
not
my
have
prompt,
issues
which
with.
was that the invasion
I
wasn't
have
justified.
questions
I don't know
for
why
that
he didn't
prompt
want to.
prepared when I post a debate. I
sorry.
put together questions based on the prompt given that I can use to drive discussion and to push both candidates or both contestants or both debaters, whatever you want to call them, right, on their points. But here we are. Okay.
Well, okay, wait.
Now
Let
you
me respond. Like I, in all due respect, you and I have debated this. You've moderated multiple debates where I've debated this. You know what my position is, and you know how it relates to the prompt. Like the reason, ultimately, my prescription to all this is not to like intervene and start bombing Kiev. It's not my prescription. My prescription is just we stop giving them money. That is ultimately the
It's to
prescription.
let Russia roll
and
over
then-
Ukraine.
and then we go into all the reasons why. What I wanted to say to Kalinda as well is, I will say once again, like the props I'll give you is you did attempt to put effort in, and you were by levels of magnitude better than Andrew Mercado. Like it can't even be compared. But of course, I would say that about anybody. So
I do think that Dylan still probably knows more than me. I mean, he has been there and he's spoken to people. And I think it's interesting that like, you basically, like what he said was right about Donbass. It's a shithole. And it's funny that you just kind of deny that. Like it's not.
I think
It's not a
I
nice
think
place to
more
live.
facts. I think you know more facts about regarding this debate than Dylan Burns does.
Okay, maybe he
At
just
least-
forgot some things. I don't know.
Yeah,
but-
unless he just didn't want to bring them up during the debates. It's possible.
Okay, $10 from Doobie. Did Kalinda look at any of the detailed reports Lactoid mentioned, or did she just dismiss them without bothering because she doesn't like what they
I
say
did
about
look at
Israel
them.
and
That's
other
why.
reports
That's how
from-
I knew that they also criticized the separatists. Of course, I'd looked at them.
Sure.
I'm just not overly fond. I have issues with Amnesty and and Human Rights Watch. And also, by the way, the UN's not perfect either. It's just that in this particular instance, I just don't necessarily think that they are. The UN is just a body of countries, and those countries can abuse the UN's various structures and whatnot in order to push things that they want to push.
Okay,
So yeah.
$10 from Doobie. Thank you for the $10, Doobie. Would Kalinda support detaining? Oh, I already read that one. $10 from Doobie to say he was tortured multiple times and denied medical care and basic necessities while being detained until he died of pneumonia. Keep in mind he was arrested for trying to leave the country. Then $10 more.
Well, no, he wasn't arrested for trying to leave the country. He had a pending trial or a pending charge against him, and then he tried to leave the country.
Yes,
I think
and the charge.
I don't know if
Yes, the charge was under, I think it was 410 or 420. I can't remember the exact section, but Zelensky specifically signed it into law, and it's the law that bans any quote unquote misinformation regarding the war. And so the things he was saying about insulting the Ukrainian military and shit, that's what got him arrested. In all fairness,
no, that's not the only misinfo he was spreading, but okay.
Sure, but
Okay.
I don't think he should be tortured. But
Well,
I don't think he should be tortured either. I'm just saying, like I said, he should have left the country. It's not listen, I don't agree what happened to him.
Debates back to back, okay.
I don't agree what happened to him. It's one of those, but I also just don't feel sorry. I just don't feel any sympathy for him. I'm not making a moral, oh man, this was morally acceptable what happened to him. I'm just saying that I just don't really feel bad for the guy.
Okay. $10 from Doobie. Kalinda's the type of white liberal MLK warned us about. The equivalent of a Trump supporter, arguing that it's fine for ICE to shoot people in the street because they should have known better. Thank you.
Oh,
for
yeah.
$10.
That is really dumb, but okay.
Prophecy foretold your coming, Kalinda, and the abomination of desolation that would result. $5 from Metalworks. Reminder to fellow liberals, people like Doobie aren't our allies.
True. I actually don't know if Doobie's a liberal. I don't know what the fuck Doobie is.
Yeah, he's very illiberal. He
liberal.
opposes restrictions on freedom of speech, and he feels bad
No,
for
that's
people who
not
are
what
tortured.
I mean, I don't know what Doobie is in the sense that I've seen him argue all kinds of different positions. I think maybe he just is in it for the love of the game, but I have no fucking idea.
$10 from Doobie. The metal guy is right. I don't ally with people who mistake vibes for values and outrage for principles. Your liberalism, quote unquote, is a costume, not a conviction. All posture, no spine. 0 principles. Thank you for the $10. $10 more from Doobie to say, if I say I'm actually Putin, do I get a refund of all super chats? You could say it, but you are not Putin, and I can confirm.
Have you ever seen Doobie and Putin in the same room?
No, but I've heard Putin, I've heard Doobie, and they sound nothing alike.
Voice
that
changers
doesn't
exist.
matter.
Yeah, if he could prove that he's using a voice changer, then fair enough.
Okay.
$10 from
Putin
Doobie.
is actually
We could
secretly
talk
a
about it at
frog.
least. Well, look, Doobie, if you are Putin, then
Putin doesn't actually use the internet,
Specific. I'll give you some geo coordinates that you should meet me at. Okay, at a certain time in a certain place. Then we have a discussion. Okay, nothing bad will happen. I promise. Just go to those coordinates. Don't worry about it, and we'll see what happens. Okay.
You can't take Putin in a fight. I don't think anybody here could.
You don't think I take Putin in a fight? He's like
a black belt in judo. No, I understand he's old, but he's like a black belt in judo. I mean, look,
okay,
do we work
he's
out
a
all
black
the
belt in
was
judo,
in the KGB.
but he's 80. Like
he also has a
fucking
gun, I'm
80 or
sure.
something. Yeah, I could take him. I think
No,
Kalinda
yeah,
could take him.
You think Kalinda
No,
could take?
I don't think that I don't think that I could take Putin in a fight because Putin would probably just pull out his gun and shoot me. Or one of
He
his
rides
psycho bodyguards
horses
would.
bare-chested. Wait,
He rides
do you
horses
do that?
bare-chested.
Those
Do
pics
you
are
ride
really
horses
old,
bare-chested?
I don't ride horses
Those
bare-chested.
pics are not
that's true.
new. Are those pics from 10 or 15 or 20 years ago?
They're-
maybe
yeah,
even
they're
those
Okay.
pics are
Also,
really
isn't he
old.
like 5'3" or 5'4" or something?
He's a short guy.
He wears he wears I listen, I got a couple anti-Putin Russians in
Look,
my
I'm
Discord.
gonna be real.
They've told me all kinds of
If
things.
he was the same age
He
as
wears
me,
like
no, I probably
platform
couldn't. Hold on,
shoes
please,
because he's
please.
insecure about
Please,
his
I want to be real. If he was my age, right? If he was like, even like
Okay,
in his
that's fair.
50s, no, I probably couldn't take Putin because he's been trained for all this shit.
Okay.
Right? But 80, yeah, I could take it.
That's not
$10
unreasonable.
from Doobie to say we could do the debate on Tuesday if you're free. Yes, Tuesday 6 p.m. Eastern. Well, I guess we'll find out. You can DM me or something.
Wait, what's the article
The
about?
article is called "Yes, All Jews."
Is it? Oh my God, he's gonna argue that. Oh my.
That's not
Actually, you know what?
anti-Semitic.
Yes, he is. That's completely on brand for
Yep.
Doobie.
Yep.
Okay.
Where they praise the Al-Qasim brigades and the miracle of October 7th and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
So
yeah,
good
I
luck
just want to be
with
clear. I love the Jews. It's very clear.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, me
Jews.
too. Wait, do you support Israel, Lactoid? I don't think I've ever seen you say. I'm curious.
I'm torn on the issue. I think Israel went too far in what they did in Gaza, but I think initially they had
Yeah,
a
I
right to
agree.
respond. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So you don't
I do
agree
not
with the
disagree.
miracle, the Al-Qasim? Then you're a Zionist, according to this article, by the way.
Well, hold on.
I'm a
I think I
Zionist.
have other criticisms of Israel. I think they're
Yeah,
called,
but it
like
doesn't
what
matter
they're doing
as
in the
long-
West Bank.
In this article specifically, they say if you do not support Hamas and the Al-Qasim brigades and the miracle of October 7th, that you are a Zionist. So
Okay. I guess
you're
I'm a Zionist then.
Yeah, by that definition. $5 from Gelatinous Rube. Can someone anti-Semitic or racist? Call someone anti-Semitic or racist. Is the best way to get out of this, Kalinda. Kalinda is, as your coach, it's your best way to succeed.
Lactoid,
Are you friends with him?
Fuck.
I can't tell. Are you friends with him? It's so hard for me to tell.
No, I'm not. I've debated him a couple of times. He's
Gelatinous
like
Rube doesn't make friends with women, so.
Can I answer a question in chat that's not super chatted?
I've debated him a
So-
couple times. I don't know. He's
No,
a fun guy.
I'll be clear. Ash, Gelatinous Rube, Nelson, whatever you want to call him, he's crazy, and I disagree with a lot of what he says, but he's a good buddy. So
He's also funny.
Yeah,
I
I
like
agree.
Nelson.
Yeah,
So
he's
I'm
also
gonna-
his cat's adorable too.
there you go.
I appreciate when people have cats or dogs.
So it's a question for me, but it's not super chatted. Is Lactoid for giving Israel military aid?
I was going to ask
Not
you
really.
that.
Not really. I think that they can. I think they can handle themselves at this point. I would, if they were actually in danger of being overrun. I mean, that'd be a different conversation. But I think right now, like, they're a relatively lucrative society, and the people they're fighting aren't. I don't think we need to be giving them money at this point. Not to say
There's
that I
all
think like
kinds-
Hamas should win or whatever. I just don't think we should be giving them money.
Okay, hold on a minute. There's all kinds of like allegations against Israel and the way in which they treat Palestinian prisoners and shit. That like, why are you for giving them aid when
No,
they
I said
also?
I said no.
torture
I said no
people?
aid.
Yeah, I
specifically
know,
said
but
no
you
aid.
said that if they were in danger of being overrun, then you would be okay with them helping out. But why don't you feel the same way about Ukraine? Israel is also doing a lot of really
So-
fucked up shit.
Israel is, and I think that there's enough there to like actually criticize and not give them money now. My concern with if they get actually overrun is it's not like a situation in Ukraine where the current maximal demands are basically Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, and and then the rest of Ukraine can join the EU and is a separate country and has autonomy and all that stuff. That's not the current. That wouldn't be the situation, I don't think. I think what the situation would be if Hamas actually started overrunning all of Israel is probably mass genocide. That's my guess. And look, if I'm wrong on that,
No, that's
like
a,
if
that's
Hamas,
a good guess. That's
probably a pretty good guess. And so,
No, you're right. I agree.
Yeah,
That's Hamas
so
wants
I
to
would
destroy
want to-
Israel.
yeah. And so I'm like, if that's impending, if there's about to be like 10 million Jews that are about to be killed by Hamas, different
Seven.
calculation at that
Okay.
point.
Okay. By
Okay.
the way,
Is it
I
only
mean, like
7? I thought it was closer to 10.
I'll have to look.
I could be wrong.
No, it's
I'll
like
have to look.
8:35 p.m.
think it's-
EST. Also,
I think it's
by the
10
way,
million people
I-
total, but not all of them are Jews.
Okay.
you're talking about the number of the total number of Jews that live in Israel. I think it's like 7
of course, 'cause
million,
the
and then
Jews would
there's
be the
like
ones
2
killed,
million
yeah.
Arabs.
Sure.
7.2
well,
to 7.3 million
some-
core Jewish
well,
residents in Israel.
I think
Wick
some number of the
once again.
Palestinian
Okay.
Israeli citizens would probably die too, because Hamas would say they were collaborators or whatever.
Sure.
It would just
Probably.
be really bad for everybody.
Yeah, it
and
would be a
also
bad
like Hamas wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And it's not like those people support Hamas. So,
Right. Right.
All that being said, though, like it is funny that again, like life under Russian occupation ain't fun. We can see the mass graves from like the satellite footage and shit in Mariupol. Not to mention like the Izium and Bucha massacres, like the torture that goes on. I feel like a lot of people would probably die if Russia basically got to have their way, especially if they got to take over territories that they don't even fully control, which is what they want. Which is
yeah. This is. I have a lot of sources on that. I just disagree with almost everything you said, but we can't go into that.
We do have to end because I have other things I want to do with my evening. It's Friday, and gang, if you enjoyed this content, if you like,
wait, we're not gonna do the no. Actually, okay, no Collins.
backstage.
All right,
well,
is there some? Oh, no one's backstage. I thought there was gonna be someone because someone was in my chat saying I think one of the Russians wanted to talk to you, Lactoid.
Well,
but okay.
I guess we can do another day. But because I do have to go. But I want, and you guys can stay if you want. Like you don't have to like, right? And
if you're ending, Wick, I'm gonna have to bounce too.
Okay, but let me,
unless it's a very quick question.
Yeah, let me just give my outro and things.
Yeah, of course.
And kind of tell you what I got coming.
I really wanted to argue about the orphans, but maybe another time, I guess.
Yes, the children must be avenged. Let me say this. If you enjoyed this content,
I don't think it matters if they're orphans. Sorry, go ahead.
Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. If you want to see more of me, then you gotta kind of support the channel. So if you want to financially support me, hit up those super chats. Hit up those Twitch gift subs, those membership subs, all these things really help the channel. It's a new month, so we're trying to get as much in front loaded as we can. We got some great stuff coming up next week, Monday at 8 p.m., so a little later than normal. We're going to have Kung Fu Joe versus the world. So if you have a problem with something that Kung Fu Joe has said, and look, he's a repeal the 19th guy, now's your chance. You can come and make a fool of him.
Wait, he's a what guy?
Repeal the 19th guy. Women shouldn't.
He's an actual theocratic. His theocratic beliefs.
You would probably have a lot to disagree with. But Monday 8 p.m. he's going to take on all commoners. Right? He's agreed to come on and take those on. Tuesday at 6 p.m., me and Doobie will be debating anti-Semitism and whether or not support of Hamas and the article "Yes, All Jews" by the authors whose name I forget at the moment, but we'll have at the time, whether or not that article was anti-Semitic or not. I say it absolutely was. Then on Friday, I'm going on a fundraiser stream. That should be fun. And that's what I got planned. We're going to probably want to get... I'm trying to get Tim from the Bulwark on my show. I've reached out to him. Me, Hutchison, Tim talking about Hassan and his role in the party, or what it should be. Tim's made a few comments that I think are kind of a bit of sweep for some of the things Hassan's done and said and positions he holds. But we'll talk about that, hopefully, if he agrees. I hope he does. We'll see. That's what I got coming up. Tune in. Bye-bye, everyone. And you're ending stream then, Lactoid?
Yeah, I'm going to be ending stream too.
Okay. Then I will just kind of call it a day. I love you all.
All right.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Wick.
Bye.